Okay, uh, good morning. It is 9:03 a.m. Monday, May 11th, 2026, and I am calling to order this special meeting of the Los Angeles Probation Oversight Commission. I am Dolores Canales, the chair of the commission. We look forward to hearing from our panelists, commissioners, and the public today. We have three main topics today and set timeframes to discuss and act on each topic so we can get through everything today. But before we begin today's meeting, I have three important issues to address. First, I would like to open this meeting in honor of Brian Diaz, a vibrant young youth who passed away at Barry J. Nordhoff 3 years ago on May 9th, 2023. Brian, we remember you and we continue this work in your honor. He was loved by so many and his memory lives on. And in reflection of Mother's Day, we've lost other youth too, that their lives are just as valuable and just as important. And though it did not happen in the facilities, but in other locations, and we want to honor all those lives that are lost. And we do this work in hopes that we don't continue to lose lives. We do this work to bring about solutions. Second, I want to note that Commissioner Edward Mundo is not here today. He has submitted his resignation from the POC on April 21st to spend more time with his family. And to say that we will miss him is an understatement. Eduardo, if you're watching, you're just so missed. I consider him a mentor, a confidant, definitely somebody that did this work with his whole entire heart. He gave so much of himself, and he's going to be very missed. And so we are grateful to him for his dedicated service to the POC, to the probation department for over 30 years, and to the community of Los Angeles. Eduardo was always so willing to help and guide all of us in our understanding of the department, and he led by example, always being the first to volunteer. Eduardo, I hope you are listening right now, and I hope we see you back here to volunteer and occasionally giving public comment. And on behalf of the commission and the staff, I thank you. Tomorrow we will be posting and sending out the application materials for anyone who is interested in applying to fill Eduardo's big shoes. Please reach out to us if you are interested. Second, I want to address the remarks made by Chief Vera Rosa at the Board of Supervisors meeting on April 28th, in which he unnecessarily and incorrectly criticized the POC, calling the commission's recommendations simply wrong, not grounded in fact, not actionable, political, and not in the youth's best interest. I'll specifically speak to his criticism of our recommendation to reduce the population by changing intake and identifying youth who can be safely released from detention. The commission projected in our depopulation plan that reforms to the intake process could reduce the Los Padrinos population by 100 to 150 youth. This was not an invention. It was drawn from the department's own data, their risk assessment tool, the Los Angeles Detention Screener, or the LADS as they call it, which the department uses for every youth upon arrival. Their own data shows that many detained youth score in the low to moderate risk range, and that youth with a risk score of 0, 1, 2, or 3 out of 12 sometimes remain detained for months without adjudication. The commission did not fabricate those numbers. We read the department's own data and asked the department to act on it. Also, the department successfully implemented a rapid release protocol with the courts just a few years ago during COVID, which resulted in a steep decline of the population and no corresponding youth crime wave. This recommendation was well thought out and actionable. And I'd also like to mention that these recommendations were not put forth solely with our own minds and our own ability. These recommendations were put forth with the input of probation, of community-based organizations, of those directly affected. And so we stand by those recommendations. The POC's recommendations are informed and actionable. We have participated in the implementation of more than 20 motions by the Board of Supervisors since we started 5 years ago. Our inspection reports and committee reports directly guide board action on conditions inside juvenile halls and in the field. Our work on OC spray led to its successful elimination in units housing girls and developmentally disabled youth. a success that was reversed by the current administration. Our education report resulted in the board voting to enhance post-secondary education services for incarcerated youth. These are not proposals and recommendations that gathered dust. They were studied, adopted, and acted upon by this county's elected leadership. The chief is entitled to disagree with our findings. He is not entitled to misrepresent our record. I agree with the chief about a few things. We want more collaboration. We would like to meet with and communicate with him and his leadership team more often. Look how well that went with our visitation recommendations that we reported on last month. I also agree that we have some fundamental philosophical disagreements about justice reform, but that doesn't mean we can't work together. So rather than attacking each other, I challenge the chief and the department to work collaboratively with us to reach the goals set by the board and supported by data and science. And with that, I'm looking forward to getting to work. Today's meeting is scheduled as followed. We will quickly get through our administrative items and begin with a discussion about probation staffing updates. At 10:30 a.m., we will move into our agenda item about probation's adult and juvenile field services. After a short break at approximately 12 noon, we will discuss progress DYD has made with planning on how to transition programming from probation to DYD. Finally, we will hear a brief report from POC Executive Director Wendy Julian on POC updates, including information requests, annual inspection cycles, and OC reports. We will also vote to form a committee to receive and review the applications for the new commissioner. We will end with general public comment. Thank you for joining us today, and let's go ahead and get started. I will turn it over to Executive Director Wendy Julian.
Thank you, Chair Canales. As always, we encourage real public participation in our meeting, and we welcome your comments in writing or live today. There will be an opportunity for the public to comment on every agenda item, and then again at the end of the meeting for items not on the agenda. The way this will work is that Chair Canales will introduce the item, we'll hear any presentations, the commission will have a discussion, and then we'll take public comment before the commission takes any action on the item. If there are more people here who want to participate than we have time for, we'll consider scheduling additional town halls for specific issues. As a reminder, please remember for all the panelists and public commenters to speak directly into the microphones so that our virtual audience can hear you clearly. I'd like to ask for everyone to share the following code of conduct for that you would respect the following guidelines. Please stop speaking immediately when your time ends, so I don't have to interrupt you. Please make sure your comment relates to the subject matter of the item. Remain respectful of each other and the forum. If you're here in person, it's easy to participate. Just stand up and go to the podium and we'll let you speak for your 2 minutes. If you're engaging on WebEx, if you're watching online, you need to use the little raise your hand icon, which is at the bottom. If you're calling in on WebEx and you want to talk during public comment, dial *3 on your phone and we'll call on you with your phone number. You may have to unmute yourself, both if you're virtual or on the phone. On the phone, you unmute yourself by dialing *6, and we will take your comment. If you have any technical problems, please go ahead and send a message in the chat, and the host will help you. All commenters today will have 2 minutes unless the chair determines we need to change the time based on how many people are signed up. If you'd rather make your comment in writing, you can email it to us at info@poc.lacounty.gov. And we will attach it to the agenda if we get it before 5 o'clock today. Please do not send your public comment in the chat. Only my staff sees it, the commissioners don't see it, and it doesn't get logged as public comment. If anyone in the room needs accommodations today regarding materials or any help making public comment or anything, you can talk to Janae and Sarah, who are in the back of the room. Our meeting is being broadcast live today to our YouTube channel. It's being recorded, but there's no engagement with users on YouTube. If you want to, we'd love for you to be on YouTube and subscribe to our YouTube channel, but if you want to interact with us, you have to be on WebEx. You can also follow all of our social media accounts on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky at LA County POC for more information about our meetings and to invite others to attend. Buenos días y bienvenidos. Muy feliz Día de las Madres para todas las madres que están escuchando. Ya ha iniciado la conferencia por WebEx y en persona. Si le gustaría hacer un comentario público, por favor, haga clic en la imagen de la mano. Es una pequeña imagen en la parte baja de la pantalla y abriremos su micrófono. Si está escuchando la conferencia por teléfono y quiere hacer una pregunta o comentario público, presione estrella 3 y le avisaremos cuando sea su turno. Si está viendo la conferencia por YouTube, no se puede participar. Nomás puede estar escuchando. Si prefiere hacer sus comentarios en español, les daremos el doble del tiempo y podemos ayudarle con traducción al inglés. Al iniciar su comentario, nomás avísenos o usted también puede proveer su propio traductor. Muchas gracias. Okay, I'm going to call the commissioners for attendance. Please respond when I call your name. Commissioner Harris, Commissioner Jackson, Commissioner Kakani, Commissioner Meredith, Commissioner Prater is absent. Commissioner Shipp, Commissioner Terry, and Chair Canales. Chair Canales, we have quorum, and I will turn it over to you.
This one doesn't. Oh, there we go. Thank you, Wendy. Let's proceed with item 2, the approval of the April 9th, 2026 regular meeting minutes. Wendy, do we have any written public comments or live public comments for item 2?
No written public comments. Anybody want to make comments about the meeting minutes?
Okay, thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the April 9th, 2026 regular meeting minutes? Thank you, Commissioner Shipp. We have a motion seconded by Commissioner Terry. Thank you so much. Are there any changes to the minutes? Hearing none, commissioners, please vote with a voice vote. Thank you. Anyone opposed? Okay, any abstentions? Hearing none, motion carries. All right, so for agenda item 3, we will discuss and take possible action on updates from the Los Angeles Probation Department's Human Resources Division on staffing patterns and trends related to overtime costs, call-out rates, recruitment of new staff, and retention of current staff. Okay. The Probation Department was asked to provide reports on leave rates, call-out rates, recruitment, retention, and overtime rates, which have been attached to the agenda. Here to present from the probation on these items are Human Resources Manager Deanna Carlisle and Administrative Deputy Stacy Lopez Maddox. So I will go ahead and hand it over to Deanna and Stacy, who
Sure. I think we're having some issues with the internet in the room here, but I think we do have Stacy on the call. Stacy, can you hear us?
I can. Can you guys hear me?
Sure can. Okay, so you all
Great.
can decide how to go forward. We can hear you fine. We just can't see you, but that works well.
Okay, great. Thank you. Deanna, I'm going to turn it over to you, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, sounds great. So we did send over the reports. Yeah. We did turn over the reports last week. Hopefully everybody had a chance to review the reports. I can go through them. I know it's a similar format to what I've presented in the past. But quickly, staffing data, all positions, we have 5,001 budgeted FTE positions and 3,534 active employees, meaning 106 FTE vacancies at this time. For the institutions, Los Padrinos has 908 FTE budgeted positions, LP has 603, and so LP has 305 FTE vacancies. SYTF, Barry J, Patrick, KC, there are 383 full-time budgeted positions and 333 active employees with 50 full-time vacancies. So that is the staffing data. I'll move into recruitment. for the next part. So I did send over some links. Hopefully you had a chance to look at those links, but basically I outlined our recruitment outreach strategies. So we have a series of social media ads: Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube, Google, Threads, TikTok, Step Up, and we have some videos on LA County Probation is hiring on YouTube. I would encourage everyone to look at those. There's one called Be the Change and one called Begin Your Legacy. They're actually really meaningful, and they were done by staff who talked about their experiences to hopefully encourage others who have similar sort of passions and desires to help to do similar things. So I would encourage everyone to check out those links. We also have radio ads. You may have seen billboards. We have revamped our landing pages for open and lateral positions. We have specific military campaigns. In 2025, we attended 124 in-person events, 26 veteran events, 29 college events, and then a whole lot of community events. So far this year, we're registered for 107 2026 events. What we're doing with our analytics is we're looking at which events really bring us positive connection. So we're still focused on going out and talking to the community, but for a recruitment perspective, we're really looking, yeah, from a recruitment perspective, we're really looking at which recruitments are, most meaningful, which ones bring us the most contacts and validated applications. So that's what we're really focused on right now, is really quality versus quantity. So we're trying to hone in. So that's why there's a few less live events. But what we've also started doing is virtual career fairs. We hosted one on February 10th, and another one is tomorrow. And we have more to come in the year. And then what we've also started doing is application workshops, because applications for the county can be a little intimidating for some people. And we want to make sure that they understand what the application process is, not just the electronic application, but what comes after that, what we review in backgrounds and things like that. So we held application workshops on February 26th, February 28th, and we'll be holding one on May 28th and one on May 30th. I also want to talk a little bit about our staff retention strategic plan. So we've developed a comprehensive staff retention strategic plan with the goal of strengthening our workforce stability in our juvenile institutions. So the strategy centers on 7 objectives. Basically, understanding why our employees join us and stay with us, improving engagement, wellness, ensuring high quality training, expanding career pathways, maintaining competitive compensation, strengthening onboarding and early career support, and institutionalizing monitoring and accountability for our staff. So we think with these recruitment strategies that we're going to be able to retain staff and retain high quality staff. So that's just a little bit about our staff retention strategic plan. Does anyone have any questions about recruitment?
Actually, it's more of a comment. Last month, I was doing my military duty down at Joint Forces Base Los Alamitos, and I came across our recruiters down there. They're doing an outstanding job. I was just going to suggest that we also should reach out, if we haven't, to Work for Warriors, which is an organization hooking military up with the civilian jobs.
Yeah, if you can send me information about that, we'd be happy to look into it further. Thank you.
Commissioner Kakani?
So I know you included a bunch of strategies, I think on the first page, the social media ads, radio ads. This whole campaign started in 2024 or before then?
A little bit before then. 2023, 24 really is the initial push.
Okay. And so just wanting to gauge the impact of that. So it sounds like in 2023, it maybe had the greatest impact. And since then, it's really only resulting in, I don't know, 98 to 72 to 27 hires.
So
I'm just trying to understand the impact of these strategies.
Yeah, so we continue to see ebbs and flows in applications and things like that, but our applications have remained pretty strong overall. We're seeing for the DPO1, we're seeing over 325 on average per month coming in. And so we continue to focus, but the reality is all sworn police, fire, everybody is having a challenge right now in recruiting. It's not just limited to us here. And so we think we're pretty competitive with partner agencies throughout the state and the country. But we're working with a firm, and I think I've mentioned that before, we're working with the firm CPS on our social media strategy to try and, really get to those candidates before someone else does. We've explained before how we've really honed in on our background process, and we feel we're very competitive in bringing that down while maintaining, of course, the quality of the candidate. So all of these strategies tie in together, but the reality is it's a really difficult job market right now, especially for this type of work. And we do want to make sure that we bring in the right people. And I think we're all on the same page on that. We want to bring in people who really want to do this work and they want to do it well. So given all of those things, yes, there are challenges with hiring, but we are maintaining a pretty good steady flow overall of applications and applicants.
Thank you. Any other commissioners have? Yes, Commissioner Jackson and then Commissioner Ship.
Hello. Yeah, thank you. Can you provide us with a brief description and timeline of what happens after an application is submitted?
Sure. So when an application is submitted, it goes to our exams team for review. They check to make sure that all the minimum requirements are included within the application. So if, for example, college degree, experience, things like that, they check basically whatever's contained within there to see if the applicant will pass to the next stage. If they do, they receive a letter telling them that they're eligible to continue, and we set up for the exam process. Our exam process is taking anywhere from 30 to 45 days, and that includes a written exam, an oral exam. From that, we promulgate a list, and applicants then will go into basically the background process. So anybody who is promulgated onto that list, we send them a conditional job offer. From the conditional job offer acceptance, then they go into live scan, background, and all of that process. That's taking right now about 90 days. And then once they get through that, they have their medical, their psych, and their polygraph. And then once they complete all of that, they're eligible to start the next class. So the academy. So altogether, that time frame, every step of that time frame, we're monitoring very closely to see where any problems are, any time frames to try and stick to our time frames. We have some challenges right now. Our backgrounds unit is a little short staffed, so that is adding a little bit of delay, hopefully not too much, but we're working on that as well. But overall, we're maintaining the kind of timelines that we implemented in 24-25.
And it's looking like it's taking approximately 1 year to get from the application stage to the,
A little bit under, yeah.
a little bit
We're
under.
shooting for 8 to 9 months.
Okay, and that's standard.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, for us,
Yeah, yeah.
that is not standard in the community.
Right.
It can take much longer for other agencies.
Commissioner Ship and then Commissioner Harris.
Yeah, can you talk a bit? I mean, I remember us, the probation department, trying to find people with military backgrounds. For the people that you did hire, can you speak about what type of backgrounds that they have? Are they youth development experts? Are they military staff? Are they former law enforcement? And what you all are looking for at this point?
I don't have the breakdown for you. It is a mix of candidates. The primary objective now, when we switched from the DSO and the GSN classifications as our entry-level classifications. We switched to DPO1, which does require a college degree. So we know that our candidates have a college degree, they have a background either in corrections, education, things like that. I don't have a breakdown of how many of our applicants have, pre-military experience or anything like that. We could probably get those analytics from CPS, but it's not something that we're currently tracking from that perspective. What we are tracking is on the front end is how many, if we go to a military event, how effective is it? How many people are submitting an application? But to track that through to the other end, unfortunately, I don't have that information on hand.
The reason I ask is because, I mean, I want to say this was last year, or maybe 2024. I made a suggestion to the chief about getting people who are already doing similar work, people who work in housing, who work with these same youth, or people who are caseworkers, to allow them to apply as well. And some of them do have degrees, and so I don't know if he has taken that suggestion, but it would be good to find out if he has.
Yeah, so the recruitment team working with CPS is looking into the candidate pool. They have a lot of analytics. Like I said, I just didn't come with that information for you, but what they're looking at is our target audience. And so the suggestions that you've made and other people have made, that is our target audience, and that's who we're trying to get. We're trying to get people who have that experience, who have that education, and of course have that desire.
Thank you so much. And Commissioner Harris, and then we'll move on to hear from Administrative Deputy Stacy Lopez Maddox, so the commissioners can ask questions of her too. Go ahead, Commissioner Harris.
Thanks. Ms. Carlisle, so I want to step away from recruiting for a minute and talk overall like strategy. I want to go back to the first page, and there are 1,500 open vacancies, and with the numbers you're providing on page 2 of how many hires you're able to make versus sworn terminations, there's a loss every year between who you're able to bring in and how many folks are leaving. What, and I don't want you to, you can course correct me. I know you're not going to answer questions about budget or impact on the field, but what is the goal? Like, I know, with 1,500 full-time vacancies and 300 at LP alone, what's the goal of the department? When you discuss this with the chief or, the chief deputies, given the difficulties that the department's having recruiting and the people that are leaving and the huge number of vacancies, what are the realistic goals of the department, and then how does that impact overall strategy for the department in daily operations?
So
You probably can't answer that last part.
yeah, that was a lot. But I will say that, the chief has made it he's spoken quite a bit about the depopulation plan, about realigning where some of our services lie and how we do that. And I think this does tie into it. We knew when I came 11 plus years ago, we knew that we had a population, we'd be looking at turnover at some point in the future. And we're seeing this, we had more retirements this March than we've seen in years past. But that's not necessarily an unexpected or abnormal thing, because we have a population of employees that naturally that turnover was going to occur in the last 5 or so years. But we do need to be smarter about how we're staffing our various units and our work. And I know that the operations, and I can't speak to this directly, but I can tell you, I know that they've been working very hard on analyzing where to put resources and how to staff. And we are looking at a departmental reorg to try and realign all of those strategies. On the human resources side, as you know, we created the probation assistant position about 1.5 years ago. We have been placing staff into that, and that role is becoming more and more utilized within the department. And I think there's going to be a lot of growth in that. And that's going to open up some opportunities for non-sworn to do support. And so maybe some of our seasoned staff who, for whatever reason, are not able to do the sworn side anymore, are able to take that knowledge and ability and move into that side as well. That will also open up a new recruitment channel for us to bring people in from the outside who have some of that experience as well. Stacy, I don't know if you have anything to add to my comments.
No, I apologize. I missed some of it because the audio was off, but just no, Deanna, you covered it well. And just, with everything, it takes time. And so we're doing a number of initiatives to try and one, get staff back to work. Recruitment is, in my opinion, they're doing the best job I've seen in any organization that I've worked in. And so I think that continuing with those efforts will just get us to where we need to be. And the restructure of probation and all of the staffing that we're looking at, that's also going to help also in time. But this is not unique to just probation. We have these challenges in other law enforcement agencies, especially with recruitment. And also with getting people through our selection process. But again, that's not unique to probation. So I think in time, we'll see more progress for sure, as Deanna mentioned, with all of these initiatives that probation's working on.
Okay, so yes, Commissioner Meredith and Commissioner Jackson next.
Yeah, I have a comment on some of the retention. I've talked to a number of staff who are getting ready to retire. And as I've pushed before, we have a reserve officer program, and that is a good way to retain them. Most law enforcement agencies have that, where they retire, but they still get to stay on as reserve. That keeps them as a viable resource to fill in. They do it at least 2 days a month. That was one of the things I wanted to point out. And the other is on the background issue. I got some suggestions we'll have offline on how to do this, because most agencies can probably hire within a 6-month period versus a year.
Thank you.
Commissioner Jackson.
Yeah, this is for Deanna. I would imagine that the department would rely on or request quite a bit of sort of consultative support from you. What do those conversations look like when you see that the department is struggling with culture, and that's something that's been happening for so long and it's contributing to so many of these underlying issues? I really want more information about the strategic plan and how you guys are focusing specifically on some of the wellness components, but I would also like to know kind of how those conversations look and how you're advising them with more of an external perspective versus someone, you know what I mean? Like how are you advising them?
So we actually developed, the department developed 3 strategic plans, primarily in response to the monitor and, getting some information about how we're rolling out these strategies. We've had a wellness plan in place, a formal wellness plan in place since 2019. And I think I've talked about that before. It includes like our peer support, wellness support for employees, probation support systems, the employee outreach programs from the county, as well as other wellness initiatives. But we did 3 strategic plans to try and really actionize those. We've done a wellness strategic plan, a recruitment strategic plan, and a retention strategic plan. And each of those strategic plans, basically we broke down the actions that we're going to initiate to try and really ramp those up and support the framework that we already had in place, but with targeted timelines. So 30, 60, 90-day timelines on things like employee recognition, employee support, outreach. Last week, we sent out a new recruitment for peer support volunteers. Many of our peer support volunteers had retired. We also reached out to our retired former peer supporters to see if they would be interested in coming back. And Don, I will say that we have one starting with us through the deputy, what is it? I'm sorry.
Reserve deputy
The
program.
reserve deputy program, thank you. And she is especially interested in peer support and will be helping us to, upgrade and support the peer support efforts. So we're doing a number of things. it's almost overwhelming how many action steps we have, but we're putting together a spreadsheet so that we can keep on track of ourselves and make sure that we're really rolling these things out timely and regularly and letting people know. But peer support is my baby. I love that program. I helped develop that program. And I'm really excited that we already have about 25 of our staff who've expressed interest just since we opened up the application period. And that's a voluntary program. They use their own time. We provide a 3-day training for them, and then they provide services to their peers. So to have 25 staff who've already reached out within the span of a week is pretty nice to hear.
Yeah. Are there any real measurable outcomes that you'd like to talk about? I feel like we just are always presented strategic plans and there's nothing material that ever really comes out of them. And I know it takes a long time to cure culture, you know what I mean? But it doesn't feel noticeable when I'm doing my inspections. It feels like there's a lot of patching that takes place with these strategic plans, but no real meaningful, measurable thing being done.
So as part of all of the strategic plans, what we also did, as I said, we did an action plan and data is part of that. So we have 30, 60, 90-day outcome measures that we'll be tracking for each one to see, did we do what we said we were going to do? What was the outcome? We also have developed some surveys to go out to staff. Those surveys should be rolling out shortly. We're planning on doing 4 short culture surveys on 4 different topic areas to go out to all staff, and we'll do that every other month. And then we'll take the data from that and we'll review it, and that will go back out to the executive team and to the bureaus so that they can inform future decisions. So we are trying to make things, as you said, not just to do them, but to see what the impact is, and then to take that and make future decisions for the next move from that.
Yeah, are you planning to submit some of the results to the commission so we have an understanding of how those surveys are working and if the strategies are effective?
Yeah, we can do that once we have that data gathered, yes.
Yeah, thank you. And a rough timeline, just so we can, as a commission, have an understanding of when they'll be effectuated and when we can expect to hear back.
So because we just rolled out the plan, we're looking at our first updates in June, July. And hopefully we'll have some data on the first actions by August.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kakani?
Sorry, I was just trying to understand the numbers, and since the chief made reference to facts, just sometimes trying to get them is very challenging too. So of the 603 active employees at LP, does that also include folks who are on leave or continuous leave, or are those people who are actually showing up to work?
Okay, so if you're referring to the numbers I gave you initially on the staffing data, so when we say active employees, that means they are full-time budgeted and they're on an item. It does not mean that they're necessarily at work. It just means that they are considered an active employee for the county. So that's why the leave data, and we haven't gone into the leave data yet, but that breaks down those numbers for you in both overall departmental and then within the institutions.
The last page of the packet.
Okay, so then of the 603 active employees at LP, I guess it's for this last month, there were 101 who are on continuous leave. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, let me switch over to that page. Yes, that is correct. Currently, there are 101 who are on continuous leave out of LP.
Okay. So hopefully 502 folks then
Yes.
are able to come to work.
Yes.
Okay. That's all.
Now, I will point out that we also have staff with approved intermittent leave at LP. And so that can be challenging on a day-to-day basis because intermittent leave means we don't always know when they're going to be out, but they are approved for a certain period of time, whether it be once a month, once a week, those types of things. But they're considered, if they're assigned to the institution, even if they have intermittent leave, they're still considered full duty. They may be working, the majority of their time, but they have an intermittent leave on file.
Okay, and then I know you shared sworn terminations, but in terms of retirement, is that a separate number?
So we use the term termination to mean any separation. So any type of separation, meaning they could transfer out of the department to another county department. They could resign, they could go back to school, or they could retire. Those are, or they could be dismissed. Those are the primary, but termination just means any separation from county service or from the department service.
Okay, that's helpful. And then you referenced, I think I heard you reference the depopulation plan as one of the strategies to address the fact that you are losing more people than you are hiring on a consistent basis.
Well,
Did I hear that correctly?
if I implied that, no, what I meant to say, to clarify, is the depopulation plan is what is basically instructing all of our reorganization. So with that framework, it's the framework. With that, the bureaus are now going back and looking at all of their units, looking at all of their functions, and seeing where they need reorganization. Seeing where, okay, maybe this unit needs 10 people and it has 20, but this unit has 5 and needs 8. So there's a lot of reorganization going on to make sure that all of our items and positions are strategically placed to support that overall framework.
And are you able to share the current staffing plan? I don't know if that's a Miss Carlisle thing or if that's a different person, but just like, I guess, what is the plan then? This framework that you're referencing, that's being guided by the depopulation plan, like what is the ultimate reorganization in terms of these are the number of folks that we're going to have at LP, these are the number of folks we're going to have at Barry J, these are the number of folks that we're going to have in the field? Is that, did I miss, there might be that number somewhere and I just missed it?
No, that's not in my documentation. Generally, HR is the last point. We affect all of those changes once they've been decided. So I will defer to, to the executive team and to Stacy if she has any additional information. But I do know that they've been working very closely and are very close to submitting reorganization plans. Stacy, I'm not sure if you can speak to that a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're very close, as Deanna said, but we've been working on this for a couple months now. So we should be, I'm hoping that we'll be done by end of fiscal year. We'll have everything over to HR to finalize all of our organizational charts because there's a lot of moving pieces right now. So yes, when that's finalized and HR is blessed and CEO is blessed, then we can absolutely share it.
And just to note, the end of the fiscal year is June 30th.
Commissioner Harris?
Thanks, Wendy.
Ms. Carlisle, when is the last time the department had 908 FTE active employees at LP or whatever the main, it could have been Central, it could have been Barry J. Like, where does that number come from? Has the department ever had 908? Looking at the first page, that's the budgeted number. And if it hasn't, where does that number come from? Does HR supply numbers to the chief for the budget, or how do we get to 908 as the desired number of people for the budget to ostensibly be working at LP? If you could help, if the HR department is part of that and you could help explain that, that'd be really helpful.
So I know that my former admin deputy prior to Stacy, Robert Smythe, came and spoke to you about budget in the past. And basically, budgeted positions, that's what the CEO approves in the line items for the county as to how many positions are there. Generally speaking, we never have, if we have 908 budgeted positions, we never have 908 staff. At any given time. We generally have a percentage below that. There's some is built in to the county budget. We utilize some of that for salary savings, but there's always turnover. There's always things. We never want to be in a position where we have more staff than budget, obviously, but you're always going to see a certain percentage that's going to fluctuate below the budgeted items. Stacy, I'm not sure if you want to speak a little bit more to the budgeted items.
No, you said it great. Thanks, Tiana. I
No, it frozen.
Um,
always happen. I don't know if you guys can hear me. The audio just went out, so hopefully you heard that.
We did not. Would you mind saying it again? We can hear you now.
Yeah, there can be there. We have attrition every month, and so we see people separating, terminating, retiring. That happens. That's just part of staffing, and that's not unique to probation. Again, that's happens within many departments because of the just movement of people.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Carlisle. I noticed on the call outs, while the data does seem to decrease, going back from January, it does seem to fluctuate and the numbers still seem kind of high on certain shifts. Is there any work being done towards the call outs to reduce that?
Sure. Before we go into callouts, did you want to talk about the leave section?
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead. Commissioner Shipp.
Yep. All right. I do have one more question, because I do see the 908 full-time employees budgeted positions, right? Can you talk a little bit about the redeployment, the recent redeployment? We were just at Los Padrinos, and a lot of the staff either were redeployed some years ago, they just were redeployed a couple weeks ago. Can you talk about, are you trying to meet the 908? Did you redeploy 300 there? Or what does that look like within the staffing data right here? I know it's not reflected, but what are we missing from here that we need?
That's a good question. So no, the budgeted items is not necessarily the concern. At the institutions, there's a certain staffing level. We have mandatory staffing and things that are required. We also have agreements, stipulated agreements with DOJ, BSCC on staffing levels. So yes, we recently reassigned staff. So that's a little bit different than deployment. Deployment, think of as kind of a temporary thing, right? Maybe you're going in one day a week, as we did with COVID. Maybe you're going in for a certain period of time. Reassignment means that we are literally reassigning you. That will be your permanent location now. So we recently, and we may still be in the process of a few more people being reassigned. I believe it's done, but I'm not sure on the timeline because we were doing it in waves. But we reassigned, and I'm not sure on the exact number, but a sufficient number of our field staff were reassigned to the institutions to make sure that we can meet those staffing requirements. Operations can speak a little bit better to what those staffing requirements are and all of that. But yes, and this does kind of tie into callouts because we know we've done enough deployments, we've done enough reassignments. We know that when that happens, we do see an uptick in callouts and things. People's lives are changed. If I'm going to be driving into Downey and next week I'm going to be driving into LA, there's going to be, I'm not used to that traffic pattern. I have to pay for that carpool lane, whatever it is, right? So we do see more call outs, more tardies and things whenever we have that switch over, and then it tends to calm down. Not that we're talking about the call out data yet, because we're going to still talk about the leave data, but it all ties in. And we see an increase in leave too. We see an increase in absences, things as people adjust to that change.
And does that come from the field budget items, or does it come from Los Padrinos budgeted item, positions? How does that work? I know temporarily that would come from the field if they're redeployed, but now that they are reassigned, do they fall within this 908 budgeted positions, or would they still fall into the field budget? Just a little clarification on how that works.
Exactly. That's a good question too. So with a deployment, they remain in their home unit. They show, if they're a field budgeted item, they remain showing as a field budgeted item. With a reassignment, we actually put them onto the budgeted items at LP. So as we're doing these reassignments, you're going to see those numbers fluctuate. You're going to see field numbers go down and institutions numbers go up.
Can we get some, especially like on that, and maybe this is a request for the POC or POC staff to ask for, but just some data on like where the funding is being used, and how it's being used versus this 908 positions versus the field staffing. I know our department has AB 109 funding, and so how all of that is being used differently on reassignments. I would love some data on that if you could grab that for me.
So
Yes,
I'm going to
and
have to defer on budget and
yeah,
finance to another
I,
division.
can I just add, Commissionership? The reassignments is a permanent assignment. So the deployment was temporary. Now folks have been reassigned to their permanent spot. And so that's why the item needs to be corrected depending on where they landed. But I will say a good percentage of our staff were already working in those facilities. And now we just made it a permanent assignment for them. Yes, we can. Once we can get you that information, once we have like the dust settles on everything with regarding the movement and the reorg, all of this is part of that. So we can get that for you. And then where all the staff landed for their permanent assignment.
Thank you, Commissioner Terry.
I'm looking at the sworn examinations, DPO1, and it seems like the biggest drop, or one of the biggest drops, is happening from conditional offers made to candidates currently in the background process. So does that mean we're losing a bulk of people once an offer is made, but maybe they're not passing background? Am I interpreting that correctly? And if so, what are some of the reasons why people aren't passing?
Correct, but that's not a straight line. I know it looks like it is, especially bullet pointed that way, but it's not. So conditional offers made, that's everybody who was promulgated, whose application was accepted, who went through the exam process, and they're put on a hiring list. So going to the candidates currently in the background process, though, that's currently right now as of today. But we've had hundreds go through already to get to the academy process, because if you look at the academy numbers from 22 to 26, you've got 98 plus 72, so those numbers tie in. Yes, we see a certain percentage. There's a number of steps within the background process. We see a certain percentage drop out at every step. But when we make a conditional offer right now, we're averaging, and this is from memory, so please don't hold me to this as a hard fact, but somewhere to 60 to 70%. Are moving to the next step. So we make the offer, that doesn't mean you take it. You could have 5 offers and you were just waiting to see which one was best. So we're going to see, a percentage drop off there. And I know that one because I looked at it recently, but it's about 60 to 70% don't accept the conditional offer, don't move on to the next phase. The next step is the live scan. Maybe they weren't entirely accurate when they told us what their background history was, and they don't meet our criteria. So maybe they drop off, because of the live scan and whatever, things they have come up in their criminal history. Then the next step after that is the background process. They work with a background investigator. They go through things like, previous history. I know we have a certain percentage who drop off because they said, yeah, I resigned from my last job and actually they were fired from their last job, things like that. Then they go into the medical, the psych, and the polygraph. And we have, a certain percentage who drop off there. So to go from the conditional offers made to the candidates currently in the background process isn't the whole picture, because that conditional offers made is from the start of the exam in 2024, November of 2024 to present. But the candidates currently in background is as of April 30th at that particular moment in time. So you're taking a total and then a slice. So that's why I'm saying, I know it kind of looks that way, but it doesn't roll out exactly like that. And hopefully I've given you a little bit more information about where they kind of fall throughout that whole process.
Any more questions? Okay.
Okay, so leave metrics. I've attached leave metrics, number of staff on continuous leave of absence throughout the department, and number of staff with improved intermittent leaves of absence department-wide. And then we break it down for you into the number of staff on continuous leave of absence, LP, BJ, Barry J, and Central Juvenile Hall. We get a lot of questions about Central Juvenile Hall. As we update our budget, again, the budget side, we have allocations. So these are where those allocations are. They're not actually at Central Juvenile Hall. They may be in other places, but that's why it's broken down. We did get a request now that Kilpatrick has become, sort of a one-stop SYTF, juvenile hall, et cetera, for the young ladies. We'll be trying to align that data, but because it's not budgeted that way yet, once we get the budget updated, you're going to see these things shift. But basically, the institutional continuous leave of absence does include anybody who's budgeted now and reassigned to these positions. So we have the continuous leave of absence, approved intermittent leave of absence, and then on the last page, what we've broken down for you is department-wide. We've gotten a lot of questions in the past on employees on temporary modified light duty. There's been a lot of discussion about that. So we did a shift early this year. All of the bureaus went back and identified additional assignments that we could put light duty staff into to assist, because we had a number of staff at home waiting for those assignments. I think you've heard about our rotational process. Well, if we have assignments available, we would prefer to have everybody back at work doing whatever they can do, even if it's just a percentage. And so in the last month, we have made a concentrated effort to bring just about everybody back. I think we have about 15 people who are eligible for a modified or light duty assignment currently at home, and we're working through trying to bring back everybody we can to fill any of those gaps and to assist us. So if you look here, we have 283 employees on temporary modified light duty assignments. It says 41. I can tell you as of this morning, it's down to about 15 because we're actively working on this. So the 283 has gone up and the 41 has gone down. We have 56 employees with permanent work restrictions. That means permanent work restriction that's incompatible with their current position. They can no longer do their current position, but we go through the reassignment process and find them alternative work. Primarily for our sworn staff, we're doing that through the probation assistant position, and we placed a number of staff permanently into the probation assistant position to do that kind of support work in the field. So we're making quite a bit of movement on our temporary and permanent restricted staff to try and utilize their skills in the best way possible and get them to where they need to be.
Yes, Commissioner Merritt?
Refresh me on this intermittent leave thing and the continuous leave.
So continuous leave just means you're totally temporary disability disabled. You're at home. Maybe you had a surgery and you're in recovery. You're in PT. You can't work at all. Intermittent leave means, well, I'll use myself as an example. I care for my parent. So every so often I have a doctor's appointment for mom and I need to take a couple hours off. I use intermittent leave for that. I don't have any restrictions myself. Intermittent leave can be a restriction for yourself, a restriction for a close family member. So whatever medical reason you need, but typically that person is working the majority of time. They just may have some medical needs.
But they schedule in advance. It's not like, I'm just going to do this now. I won't be.
Most of the time, but not always, because I may have a condition. Let's say I have migraines and I wake up Monday morning and I have a migraine. If I have an intermittent leave on file and my doctor says, hey, Deanna has this condition that requires her to be off 3 times a month because she may have a flare up, then I might be calling in with no notice because I had a flare up. So there's a variety of different things depending on the reason. Intermittent leave is one of the most difficult to manage though, because yes, the majority of the time it's not pre-scheduled.
Okay, I come from a different world then, because I come from a world in government where you either call in sick because you're sick, or if you get the intermittent leave, but it's not just random, I can do it anytime, because that really affects and impacts scheduling. We have a lot of great hardworking staff that come to work regardless of circumstances, and I appreciate that, but I just have a problem with thinking this, I got this intermittent leave in the book, so I'll just take it today. Oh, I've got a headache. versus calling in sick leave. And I know Sedgwick's a whole other issue. I want to go there today. So I just was curious for clarification. Thank you.
Sure.
Yes, Commissioner Jackson.
I have a question about hiring. You provided some visuals for recruitment, and I guess I'm curious to know, at what point do candidates become aware of the requirement to work, in excess of 8 hours a day, so maybe a lot of overtime, and then those short notices? Like, at what point do they learn that those are going to be requirements?
So we do have that embedded into our application bulletin. So whenever we post a job posting, we call it a bulletin. That's just county talk. So those bulletins, we have that information in, that the expectation may be that you work overtime, that you're held over, things like that, because we want to be very clear and transparent about that process. So all of our links in those ads that I sent you, here, I'm gonna borrow this. All of the links are in here that link to the expectations of the job, that link to background requirements, things like that, so that candidates can be informed. The last thing we want to do is I call it a bait and switch. We want people to be very informed about the expectations, about the requirements, and we want them to want to be here and to want to do this type of work. So we make sure that all of that is from the onset, not something that we spring on them after their second month with us.
Yeah, I wonder about balancing that sort of management of expectations and that transparency, which is actually really important, with the sort of perception of burnout before employees even start a job. I think that's part of the issue with culture. And so there are lots of candidates that actually may be qualified. And so maybe messaging is really important, and how these requirements are framed are really important, because you have people leaving for the very reason that people may be deterred or disqualified from those same jobs. So I'm wondering about messaging and framing.
Right, absolutely. It's critical, and we try to make sure that we're very transparent about those expectations, but also about the rewards of the job, even with all of those expectations. I would encourage you to go ahead and look at all of our material and the links, and if you have suggestions, please let us know.
Can I just add real quick? We want to also include, as part of our wellness plans and informing candidates coming through during our selection process, also meeting with their families and having a type of family day at the academy, so that we can talk about all those things and what the impact of the job can have on them. And what to prepare, and how the families can help with that too. So that's another piece of our wellness initiative that we would like to, add to that, because it is very important. They know what they're, walking into on day one, and then the hours and all of that comes with it. And it can be obviously a stressful job.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And so I'm wondering, in this interview process, if there's somebody that's highly qualified with education, experience, but then they get asked the question, you will be required to work up to 16 hours, with no notice. You will be called in to work evenings, weekends, holidays. And they say, no, I can't do that. I need an 8-hour shift because of my wellness, because of my family obligations, because of, whatever the reason may be. Would that be an automatic disqualification?
So in the application process, we do have some questions that say, are you willing to work nights, weekends, and extra hours? And yes, that could be a disqualifier, because the reality is we can't guarantee. We can't. If we have a certain staffing requirement and we have only a certain number of people, then the reality is somebody needs to stay and provide that information. Unfortunately, we don't have the luxury of being able to clock in 8 to 5 in this type of environment, but we're trying to be very clear with people about what that expectation is, so that they know at the front end, so that they can, work their lives sort of understanding those requirements. And as Stacy said, we're looking at strategies to support that on the back end, talking to families about those expectations, talking to staff about the expectations, and initializing wellness strategies and things so that people are healthier, so they're not as sick. They're not calling out as often, so that they feel that they have the support systems to be able to get through those times. And the reality is the holdovers are because of our staffing problems. So the more staff that we're able to get in and the more staff that we have assigned to these particular locations, the less prevalent that's going to be, holdovers and things like that.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Terry?
But is there any balance you can have with maybe hiring some people who maybe can't stay for these extra hours so that you are increasing the number of staff to then reduce the number of holdovers? Because I see what you're saying where there's a mandate with the staffing, but then it seems like a lot of people who have something to offer would just be disqualified because they're not going to commit to a 16-hour shift. But then on the other side, it's like, well, but once you're hired, we really care about your wellness. But it would seem like there would need to be a balance to hire more people up front to help with the holdovers. Or is there any data to show if that practice is working, or like best practices other counties use or something?
So I'll go back to the probation assistant position. That's a non-sworn position, but it's very specialized. And the work that they do, we're looking at rolling that out into the institutions as well to support the peace officers with things like reporting and things like that. And because it's more of an administrative operational position, it's not going to have the same types of requirements. I mean, the reality is you don't have to be sworn to work over 8 hours too. But of course, we have to look at those strategies. But for sworn staff, that is a part of the duty. And our goal is to try and get enough staff in there that it's only necessary periodically. It's not the norm, it's the exception. That's our goal in staffing.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions before Ms. Carlisle moves on to her presentation?
Okay, so I know you had questions at the front end about call out data. So we have a staff scheduling unit now that is doing scheduling for the institutions, and they're tracking this call out data. I have the numbers for you. I have some of the information about it, but hopefully the numbers speak for themselves. I'm just going to point out that in January 2024 at Barry J, the monthly average call out was about 12%. It's come down to about 9%. And at Los Padrinos, it was 16% and has come down to 8%. So we do think we're making significant headway. Again, shifting how we're doing deployment versus reassignment, how we're staffing up to make sure that there's adequate coverage and things like that. There's a lot of strategies, I believe, that go into this overall, but you can see that there is a significant decrease in the rate of callouts.
Thank you for that. And the reason I had questions about callouts is because I know, visiting the facilities, I've had probation tell me when they do get reassigned or deployed, and, they're trying now to change their whole agenda to, drive out 90 miles and having somebody to pick up the kids and transport and things like that. And their only choice sometimes is a call out. And, so it's like working with communication in doing those moves and reassignments. And I'm wondering if the commissioners have any questions or comments that they'd like to make. Yes, Commissioner Kakani.
So I'm just trying to make sense of the numbers. So I'm just looking at like April 26 at a Barry J, right? So you have 197 callouts, but then you have 460 no call, no shows. And the shift scheduled, whatever, 2,488. So you have an 8% call out rate here, but that doesn't include the no call, no show, because I'm pretty sure, just like quick math, 460 is not 8% of 2,488.
So we do know that at Barry J, we have a data problem with our no call, no show. A lot of the staff were not using the no call, no show system. So we expect those numbers to to change significantly for Barry J in specifics. In the no call, no show, those are overstated. They're not actual. So when we get a no call, no show through the system, we have to validate that and have the supervisor go out and check. Unfortunately, there are some errors that are happening and staff weren't using the no call, no show system. So other staff supervisors were entering in. So the staff scheduling unit is aware of that problem and they're looking into addressing and making sure that it's being utilized properly and that the numbers that we're getting back from that. But they did tell me before I came that there's a little asterisk on the Barry J data for the no call, no show, because there's some problems with the system and staff utilizing it properly right now.
What's a little problem? I don't know. And how long has this been a problem?
And I don't know. I don't know the answer to that because again, this data that I'm bringing you is not data that I manage within HR. It's managed now within staff scheduling, but there are some anomalies and we think it's a combination of staff not using the system and then the information being entered into the system by supervisors, officers of the day, things like that. So there's a mismatch there.
Okay.
We're trying to get that cleaned up as soon as possible to make sure that that data is accurate. On the other side, I have presented to you before about the no call, no show attendance and disciplinary action, corrective action that we've been doing. We are seeing overall declining numbers overall. So I wouldn't be as concerned with the no call, no show numbers that you're seeing here, because overall we're seeing a decrease in that. Every time there is a new deployment or a shift, we see a little peak, but overall we see a downward trend. And I can send over some data on the no call, no show trends over the last year so you can see in a better format kind of what the trends are and things like that, and how we believe that addressing corrective action has really helped this problem. We don't see the significant no call, no shows that we used to see.
Okay. So I'm just going back to the facts again, because the chief made a significant comment about that. And so it's so hard, again, for all of us to have an honest conversation when the data that we're working with is not factual. So again, I'm just curious, when did this become a problem? Like, when did you notice or when were you informed that there has been a data collection problem?
So I was
just before you got here?
Yeah, I was informed of this last week that at Barry J, we're not seeing the same alignment. And it was part of pulling this data and getting it prepared for this. So I'll have more information for you on that particular thing once they're able to actually dive in and figure out what the data mismatch is.
I guess that just stating my point again, that if we didn't realize this was a problem until last week, how long had it been a problem for?
Good morning, commissioners. I think all the questions have been spot on what's happening over at probation. And to Commissioner Kakani's point, I think there's a question of today what we are showing you versus how long. It's been a long time.
It's been a long time since the data collection was incorrect.
Well, I think that what's happening is prior to Chief Vieira Rosa taking over, prior to this administration, there have been a lot of things that have been let go and just understood as this is a norm. What has been happening more recently, the chief has undertaken a very significant project with every deputy director in the department and looking at their organizational chart to every person in every position in every office, in every assignment, both sworn and non-sworn, to make heads or tails of this, to shape it out that we have good span and control, we have good supervision. I think Deanna talked a little bit about that already. To the centralized scheduling problem that you're seeing here today is that we've also, in that shakeup of the organization chart, we've strengthened the centralized scheduling to cover all facilities. And it's a slow turn, but we're having everybody get on centralized scheduling so we can have real-time data coming in on who's showing up, who's not showing up, who's calling out, et cetera. So, it is unfortunately the problem at hand for us right now, but we do understand it. And I think the chief really has hit the mark with really trying to kind of herd this problem back into a shape where we can have good data presented to you, to the board, and to this county.
I'm just going to say it again. You didn't even know this was a problem until last week, but
So
glad
let
to
me
know that
let me
it's a problem
clarify
now.
for you. So the no call, no showed currently, we know it includes a couple of key areas. Someone who actually no call, no showed, but someone who reported to the facility and failed to sign in, because once they report, there's a sign in process. So if they don't sign in physically, then it's reported as a no call, no show, but they may be there. And then somebody has to go back behind and see, okay, who signed in for the shifts and things. That takes a little bit of time to do. And then there are a lot of people who are on leave of absence, but they haven't yet been removed from the scheduling application because we have people go in and go out. So we're honing in on those 3 areas to make sure that that data is more accurate. But those are the 3 significant areas that are impacting that no call, no show number, and primarily at Berry J.
Thank you. Yeah, that's very interesting about the no call, no show, and that's a really good catch, Commissioner Kakani. I didn't even really understand what the NCNS stood for, but it's interesting too, because I don't think you can't just do that at a job, right? You can't just say, oh, I'm not going today, I'm not going to call, I'm not going to show up. But so there's needs to be some kind of like documentation. If this is happening, by who is it happening? How many times is it happening? And then at some point, some kind of termination, because, why are they even there if they're just no call, no show? I mean, in, regular jobs, that's kind of like calls for termination. So getting that straightened out will bring clarity. Any other commissioners, questions, comments before we move on?
I think the department already has some pretty severe staffing issues, and so termination is probably like not really an outcome that we would like to see. However, the department should be really invested in making sure that everyone is well trained on the system and that there is someone who is actively auditing and catching those things in real time so that they can be corrected and then reported more accurately. So I feel like that is a more appropriate step to take.
Sure. And I know last time I presented, I did talk about the disciplinary action, the corrective action that we've implemented. We've done over 1,000 corrective actions. The majority of them are notice of expectations, which is simply, as you said, reminding people what the expectation is, what they're supposed to do if they can't make it to work, if they no call, no show, if they're tardy, et cetera. So we've issued more than 1,000. We have had a couple of terminations of people due to attendance, but the majority of it we're able to address at the lower levels at, maybe a letter of reprimand, a notice of expectations, maybe a short-term suspension, so that they understand how important the attendance is. Because again, we wouldn't need to have more people if everyone showed up timely. We wouldn't have to have these holdovers and things. We have enough staff in our budget, hired active employees. If everybody showed up consistently, our holdovers would be much less. Again, the exception, not the rule.
Thank you. Commissioners, before we move on, is there any other final comments? Okay. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and talk about the overtime. And that's going to be Deputy Stacy Lopez-Maddox. Thank you so much.
I'm probably going to go through this relatively quickly. I apologize, I'm not there in person. And the audience hear me. And if you can't, let me know. I was asked to come back today to talk about last month's conversation regarding probation's budget. So we provided some information to the commission last week on those items. So Commissioner Canales, if you want me to run through those, I can, and then take questions. Does that work?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you. If you could hear us, but we are not able to hear you right now. So I'm not sure how long we want to do this. Keep playing with the audio or just.
Okay. Now,
I think we could hear you now.
okay, great. So last month, when I was there, we talked about our proposed budget for probation. And then there was a number of questions that came up from the commission regarding current vacancies, which I think Deanna discussed. But currently, department-wide, we have over 14.
We're not able to. I feel like we're doing a Verizon commercial. Can you hear me now? We lost you again.
To compliance with DOJ settlement and the implementation of the deregulation plan.
We missed a big portion of your presentation. You just barely came back on.
Oh, shoot. Okay. Can you hear me now?
You want to try calling in instead of using this technology?
Well, what if, did everybody get a chance to look at what we submitted? Because I was just thinking I could just take questions if that would be easier.
There is a one-page PDF attached to the agenda and in the commissioner's packets called County of Los Angeles Probation Department Field Offices Overtime Hours and Expenditures Charging to Halls.
Oh, okay. I can address the overtime piece if that's what's needed. I was going through the items that we submitted from last month.
No, those items are not on the agenda today. That was just the response to the motion. So those items have been received. That was the item on the agenda last month was regarding the budget, and those items were received on Friday. They've been attached as well. The commissioners received them on Friday, but the item on the agenda right now is just the overtime. That's the only remaining.
Okay, well, at this point, I think we just need to go ahead and move forward with the meeting and close this item out for right now. Before we go on to public comment about this, are you thinking that's the best move to? All right.
Okay, so we'll go on to public comment on this first substantive item on the agenda about the staffing report. So if you'd like to give public comment in the room, please come up to the podium. And if you'd like to give public comment online, use the little raise your hand function. If you're dialing in on the phone, press *3 and that will put you in the queue. I don't see any public comment in the room. Do we have some online? Maybe if you just say it, I can hear it. Okay, call-in user number 3. We will unmute you. And, oh, hi, I see you. We'll take you next if you don't mind. Okay, so we'll start with a call-in user and you'll have 2 minutes. And you just need to dial *3 to unmute yourself. I'm sorry, *6 to unmute yourself.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good. All right. My name is Mel from District 2. I had a couple of things. One, there's a line that says it's cheaper to keep her, or maybe cheaper to keep him. And I say that because there seems to be a significant amount of resources that are allocated towards recruitment. And I wanted to know, sorry we didn't get a chance to hear it, but it would be good to know what's the dollar amount of money that is set aside for recruitment versus retention. We did hear a lot of philosophical approaches to retention, but that would be good to know. Secondly, what is the department doing to honor the rights of all of the American with Disability Act consumers, the ADA consumers? Because it seems to be a gray area right now. Pardon me. Third, can the department be more intentional, or can the department be intentional in regards to hiring more members of the African American community? If you look at the last few photos from the JCLC, the percentages of those who are being hired is not symmetric to those African American justice involved youths that are detained and or on probation. And I believe we passed something a while ago that was supposed to be like that. For the probation assistant position, we continue to ask, what does that mean in regards to supervisors and directors? It doesn't appear to be an option. And then lastly, the survey, I think it's an amazing idea. Keeping in mind that those individuals who are not currently at work, they do not have access to the county information or to the departmental emails. So I think those surveys should go out to people personally who are not at work, as well as to those who are just recently retired, if you want to get a true, or maybe even those who did not accept the conditional offer, to get a true global understanding of where we really are in today's world. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mel. You can begin.
Hi, my name is Taliba Coffey. I am an executive board member with Local 685. First, would like to thank the commission for giving me the opportunity to speak on this subject. We do recognize that this is a crisis within the department, and at some point we would hope that management would include us. Staffing emergency now impacting both institutions and field services is the result of long-term policy failures, chronic understaffing, operational instability, and years of inadequate hiring. Frontline officers are increasingly being blamed for conditions they did not create. Much has been said in the public about call-outs, but the narrative being pushed about frontline officers is deeply unfair and inaccurate. Officers are not calling out because they're lazy or unwilling to work or they have a headache. We actually did a survey of our members. What we found, the number one reason that they indicated they called out was not enough time for rest after my last shift. Number two reason, I was unable to handle family matters due to prior long shifts. So what you're seeing here is employees are exhausted. They're overworked and exhausted. Many of the officers working in violent and high stress environments, extraordinary long hours, and being ordered back with inadequate recovery time, again, leading to exhaustion. What we do propose is meaningful retention strategies, realistic staffing stabilization, safer schedule practices, and an end to constant emergency redeployments or reassignments. Serious engagement with the frontline staff and labor organizations is needed. In closing, which I might not have enough time, I basically want to say that
Thank you, Ms. Coffey. We have one more call-in user, and then we'll close off public comment on this item. Your number starts with 310. You need to dial *6 to unmute yourself. You go ahead and try to speak. You're unmuted on our side.
Hello? Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. On the application process, there's a difference between may and will, as Ms. Carlisle said. It says on that process, you could, your education, experience, and leadership abilities are not considered if the applicant does not agree to work a 16-hour shift on the questionnaire. I just want to make sure that's a big difference. Applicants are being denied, rejected, because of that one question on the questionnaire prior to even looking at the education, experience, or leadership abilities. Thank you so much.
So much for your comment. And I just want to say something before we close out and move on to the next agenda item. Ms. Carlisle, I'm not sure if you caught it, but in your presentation of the call outs, and you mentioned you noticed an uptick, that an uptick is noticed during deployments and reassignments and everything like this, and it's repetitive. And, you know, just putting this in layman's term, Friday, my grandson is graduating in the evening. If I went to work Friday morning thinking I might not be able to leave, well, you could bet I would call out, you know, in layman's term. And if it's repetitive, that it's noticed that there's an uptick during this time, you know, why keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results? And so I'm really interested in the presentation and the comment that was just made, and I would like to have that submitted because there is solutions. They're being presented. And so that is, you know, something that I think is very serious, especially when we are expecting probation to show up and work with the youth with a healthy frame of mind, with a mindset to be inspired and motivated and encouraged to show up to work for success. And so that is why this is an issue to me. When I talked to probation staff that couldn't use the restroom because there was nobody to cover, I think it's an issue, and it seems to be repetitive, but yet there is solutions at hand if anybody would listen. And you did, somebody could rewind the video. You did comment that it's noticed. So, you know, just taking it from there. And then I would like to pass it over to Director Julian to present the next agenda item. We're doing a switch up.
Yes, she's transferring it to me so that I can apologize because I made a mistake and I told the DYD team that they could go second, and then we didn't, I did not communicate that to the leadership staff. So I'm going to ask you all if you would mind accepting my apology. And I would like to mostly apologize to Directors Aguilera and Wolfsgruber in the back of the room who thought they were going next. And if you would mind going after the DYD presentation, my apologies. Is that all right?
Oh, yeah.
Is that okay? Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
I'm just here to make.
We're here till 1, so, you know.
Very much.
The hot seat awaits.
Good morning. Okay, great. Thank you so much. So for agenda item number 5, we will discuss and take possible action on a report from the Los Angeles County Probation Department of Youth Development, DYD, to discuss progress on transitioning the work of providing programs in probation's facilities from probation to DYD as unanimously directed by the Board of Supervisors in a motion from April 7th, 2026. And it is attached to this agenda item. And here is DYD's report back. Here to present on this item is Director Carroll. Oh, yes, David Carroll, Director of the Los Angeles County Department of Youth Development.
All right, good morning, everyone. Happy to be here and definitely want to thank Chair Canales for the donuts, so that made my day this morning. I get excited to see those. Thank you for having us here this morning. The presentation is, I would assume, showing behind me right now. You know, wanted to share that this is not a new initiative. The board actually directed DYD to take the lead in programming at all facilities back in 2023. When we were just a baby of a department. I think we had been around less than a year at the time. We started that initiative through some of our programs that you're familiar with, Credible Messenger, some of the other programs that are taking place in the camps and halls, health and physical fitness, some workforce programs, life skills, financial literacy, et cetera. But this motion in April leans into that motion from 2 years ago, again, that called for us to take the lead in programming. And we're excited to work alongside probation to actually take that role, expand access to the programming, make sure that we are filling gaps that young people have identified in terms of the types of programs that they want to have access. And very importantly, it's a unit by unit approach. Some units may be very robust with the programming that they have available, while others have a lot less. And we often see with the girls, for example, that there's less programming for the girls than there are for the boys. For the older young youth that are facing potential transfer, we see a lot less available programming for that population who are not in school, et cetera. So we are really excited to lean into this work. We know it is a Herculean effort. It's going to take a lot of work between us, our various other county departments, and probation. We just completed our first report back, which is a 30-day report back that provides an overview of DYD's phased transition plan, analysis of resources and information needed, as well as next steps. We're working in partnership with probation as well as our other county stakeholders. We value the experience and insight of our partners and understand that success is contingent upon a robust collaboration. We've been meeting with probation for about a year on how we will work together to support youth. These efforts progressed in February as we began defining the specific processes within the team. Since the motion was released last month, we convened a stakeholder meeting with all relevant county departments. That would be the health serving departments, arts and culture, libraries, LACO, ISD. If I'm missing anyone, please forgive me, but the other departments that are in the facilities. We're excited, they're excited about this potential new role and trying to streamline some of their challenges, entering and accessing the young people when they come for their various programs also. We've met with probation leadership and created 2 work groups, really 3, a leadership work group, and then two groups that one focuses on operational design and another focused on program implementation and evaluation. Those work groups will be meeting for the first time this week. The transition is in a very early foundational stage, guided by our collaboration and feedback. The plan will continue to evolve as we move through each phase of the rollout. We know how complex this is going to be and how important it is that we get it right for the young people who rely on this programming. So we're here to share DYD's evidence-informed approach and the processes by which we're going to collaboratively refine implementation details. We're really looking forward to hearing your questions and feedback. DYD's goal is to help coordinate and resolve barriers to youth development programming through transitioning the programming probation is currently responsible for and coordinating across departments and service providers for filling gaps. So behind you, what you have is a very busy slide that is so tiny on my paper that I can't read it because I'm old. But these are all of the 11 directives that are within the motion itself. There is a very strong role that county council as well as the CEO's office is playing to help facilitate the meetings between probation and us and to identify the resources, the money that we're going to need to pay for this plan. I was told not to talk about the budget, but I feel that I'm just going to do it because I'm going to avoid the question. So if anybody throws anything at me, they're forgiven. We have what we think it's going to cost, right? But the motion itself is really going to refine that. But what we understand is that we want to increase the programming from about 7.2 million to about 12.2 million in actual direct contracts with providers to fill some of those gaps. We recognize that there's an administrative fee that goes along with that of about $1.9 million. We will have folks in the facilities to coordinate the programs that arrive to get them to the unit that they need to be in, and that's about 2.8 million. And then you'll hear more from Patricia, but the most exciting aspect of the plan is what we're calling our developmental coordination, where young people will actually have case managers, folks with a social work background that work with them from intake through reentry, right, to make sure that they have access to the various programs. And for year one, we're anticipating about 4.9 million starting at CVK, 4.9 at CVK and Barry J. Nidorf. So what we anticipate the budget is about $21.8 million for the first year. Again, that may change. The disclaimers there, CEO and others are working with us to identify the resources, but I felt I needed to at least share what we think it's going to cost, even if it's not set in stone. We can go to the next slide very quickly, and this talks about the overview that I provided a moment ago. I'm sorry, I wish my slides were bigger. Our central programming coordinating team to provide strong program management and ensure compliance. We are well aware of the DLJ, the BSCC, the various court responsibilities. So we absolutely want to make sure that we are staying within compliance. And that's one of the things we're really working closely with probation to ensure. And then the youth development and reentry, again, those care coordinators are going to be working with young people and connecting them with programs in the facility and when they return to community through RAY, our reentry program, as well as other programs that are available. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to my colleagues to get into the details of the plan.
Thank you. Good morning, commissioners. Happy to be here. I will do a quick overview of each of the pillars as Director Carroll has already described. But just to say really simply that, again, the whole orientation is to get young people home, right? We know that incarceration should be a last resort for the shortest duration possible. And so these three pillars are really imagined to be operating together, assuming they're well-resourced, implemented well, but really integrated to make sure, again, that the orientation is to identify what young people need to be safely released and to return home and stay home and not come back into the facilities. So I'm going to start with the first pillar, which is the next slide, please. So our approach really introduces a strong youth development framework that identifies what young people need, the full range of services across the youth development domains, so that they can thrive when they go home. And again, that's not to say that the metric is that they are thriving in every aspect in facilities. They are safe to go home, and will continue to work on their individualized goals that we help identify. This would happen through a central coordinating unit. And so DYD would really expand its current programming staff so that we do two things. One, identify barriers to accessing existing effective programming, and then also identify gaps continuously, right? Constantly doing gap analysis to identify along this continuum what is missing inside facilities, and then to identify programming and supports to be able to meet those gaps. I'm going to actually go back to the first slide to talk about youth development coordination and reentry planning. So youth development coordination, as David mentioned, is really our first frontline staff working directly with young people to ensure that they have care plans and collaborative care meetings early and through reentry. So really from day one, we are working with young people to identify what they need to work towards their goals. And we would work with partner agencies in ensuring that we're not duplicating any existing care management, but really complementing existing clinical, educational, arts programming, whatever else is being provided to young people. And this would also have to take into account, of course, the population-specific realities, facility-specific realities. So, of course, SYTF care coordination would look really different than, for instance, LP care coordination. And then lastly, youth engagement is really an underpinning to all of the programming and youth development coordination and reentry planning. So we would introduce a new youth-centered engagement strategy. So this is, really kind of like a new behavior management strategy to incentivize positive behavior, to really also be individualized as much as possible to a young person's specific goals, and to provide restorative solutions to address conflict and improve climate. I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Taylor to talk more about this, but of course, this is the beginnings of a framework, and the process ahead that Taylor will describe is intended to continuously refine and flesh out the operational details.
Thanks, Patricia. Hi, everybody. As you've heard, this is really intended to share just our best thinking at this time based on research on best practices in youth development and on programming for justice-involved young people across the nation, and on the data we have available today. And it is intended to be a living design, to be evolved and refined together with our colleagues at Probation based on their feedback, their expertise, with our colleagues from other departments who serve this population of young people, and with community members and young people themselves as we move into the next stage of really firming up this plan and laying a really solid foundation before we begin implementing. I want to share a little bit about our process so far and then what's to come. So first, I mentioned, and you've heard from us, that we've spent the last bit of time to prepare for this initial 30-day share out this initial 30-day report back, which will then be built upon in the way I just described by ongoing collaboration and our commitment to receiving collaborative feedback and adapting the plan as we go. It's been based on research on what really works in other places, what we can learn and take from that to support these young people in LA. And it's been informed by a team that we've pulled together at the Department of Youth Development who reflect a range of expertise, both folks who have worked in LA County's youth justice facilities with young people, folks who have real strong expertise in program design based on best practices in youth development. And we have a group of consultants who reflect expertise on a national stage from really working on transforming programming approaches, youth engagement approaches in other jurisdictions like DC, where we've learned a lot about what can happen when we have this kind of integrated model and clarity on roles and responsibilities, but in a way that recognizes that it takes a village to support these young people. And so, we want to be part of that village along with our partners. And we're really committed to that close collaboration with all the partners I've mentioned and to engaging with young people and community members as we move into this next stage. So we would love to hear questions, feedback, concerns. That is absolutely where we're at and why we're sharing this initial plan here, and we'll continue to share it in other spaces. Our next stage, just really quickly, as I mentioned, will include opening up for more community engagement and continued stakeholder engagement. So in the next couple months, if folks are interested in being part of any of those opportunities to participate in listening sessions or share more with us about what you'd like to see, please reach out to us. We'll also be sharing through our networks when those opportunities arise. So I'm going to pass it back to David to close us out.
I'm going to just take a quick caveat and open it up for Dr. Corral who wants to add the next part.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Jesus Corral, Senior Director, LA County Probation. I'm just here to emphasize probation's commitment to ensuring that the board's vision comes to fruition. We look forward to working with DYD, the board, the CEO, county council, and all of the other stakeholders as DYD takes the lead role in programming. As Mr. Carroll mentioned, this is something that is at the very early stages. The board motion was just passed in early April. The 30-day report to the board was recently submitted, and we have work groups already scheduled to begin working on this process. It's not going to be there's certain timelines that are set in place, and some of those timelines are very ambitious. And so we look forward to working with DYD to ensure that we eliminate barriers and, most importantly, improve and increase the services available to the young people in juvenile institutions under probation's care.
Thank you, Dr. Corral. That actually, you took some of my notes. I think you might have been peeking. I'm not sure. No, thank you so much. Navigating this path will be challenging. It requires us identifying and obtaining the management tools and the administrative resources we need to move forward. We're ready for the challenge. DYD has a strong track record of being a good, respectful, and responsive collaborator with county departments as well as community partners. We generate consistent, actionable data that drives program improvement and maintains accountability to our partners, youth, and families. And this model will also be supported by DYD's continuum of care, including community reentry, to Patricia's point. So thank you, and we look forward to fielding your questions.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Jackson, and then Commissioner Harris, and then Commissioner Meredith.
Yes, thank you all for presenting. I'll leave it to other commissioners to dig into the model. I have a more generalized question, which is, I guess I'd like to know a little bit more about the other models that you guys are borrowing from. I can appreciate the sort of comparative element that's needed in order to make sure that we're identifying best practices, et cetera. However, LA is very unique, and it is very important that we have geographic specific models, solutions, and things like that. So I'd also like for you guys to speak to that uniqueness and how you guys are thinking through programming, understanding that we have very high need population that we deal with very specific needs, and we want to be effective in addressing that. So
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for that question. And we agree completely. We at DYD, this is how we go about designing programs, new programs all the time, where it's both, as you said, thinking what can we learn from other places who have tried to solve similar problems, but you're completely right that it is really important to us to make sure we're adapting that, informed by the local context, the unique needs of Los Angeles County, and the unique needs of this population, as you said. So I can just quickly say, and then see if others have anything to add, but we can also talk more about this another time or share more about those models in detail. But one of the places that we have been most inspired by is the work that's happened in Washington, D.C. with the Department of Youth Rehabilitation Services. We are consulting with Clinton Lacey, who led the Department of Youth Rehabilitation Services in DC for many years, and now provides consulting and technical assistance to other jurisdictions who are looking to think about similar questions, which is exactly as you said, how do we tailor what was learned from that experience to our local needs? So the way we do that, just really briefly, is that we learn as much as we can about what other places have done, and then we gather as much data about the local context as we can, and then we engage with local experts and, as I mentioned, with the young people themselves, with partners themselves, to figure out, this is what this other jurisdiction did. Does this feel right in our context? What do we need to change? How do we be as informed as possible about our needs? I don't know if that's helpful, but that's at a high level, I think, how we are approaching it, and really appreciate the reminder of how unique Los Angeles County is.
I have a follow-up question, and you guys can still speak to the initial one with the follow-up in mind. Like, what are two unique traits you guys would identify specifically as a follow-up question?
I think this is on point. Just to add to what Taylor described, the crux of the New Beginnings model in DC is really positive youth justice, which is really strength-based, and youth engagement, right? So everything, programming, care coordination, the behavior management approach is about engaging young people. So something as simple as when there's an opportunity to award points and to move from one level to a next, right, to within a facility, there is training and a practice between online staff and the young person to talk about, what that award meant, or if there was an opportunity that wasn't achieved to award a point, then there's engagement around that, right? It's not someone sitting in the corner and sort of like just marking on a paper and the young person doesn't know. Everything in the facility should be about youth engagement, about supporting young people in achieving the goals that they help identify. And it's really about empowering young people to become participants in their own lives. I think that that's the fundamental shift, and everything sort of flows from that. And then just to add, to what Taylor has already, presented, to your point about LA being very unique, right? Like we have 7 facilities, although, maybe the numbers change. So is it 5 or 7? But DC is 1. And so we have to really, like I said before, take into account the specific population, the facility, that facility design. And now we have facilities where you have mixed populations, right? You have pre-dispo and post-dispo. Post-dispo includes camp and SYTF. So I do think it's a much more complicated reality. And when we drill down into the operations with probation, we have to take into account what it looks like for each of those populations and each of those units, even within different facilities.
I got one.
Thank you. Commissioner.
Yeah, she made, sorry. I was just going to say, she made the point, and I just want to just underline that centering the young people is absolutely the most important part of this process, followed by looking at things that are working and making sure that we continue those things while we expand new opportunities for the young people.
Thank you. Commissioner Harris?
Thanks. And I want to, I'm having trouble processing this a little bit. What is the plan? Like, is this the plan, this slide, or what is the plan?
Yeah, that's a fair question. And I think we were being overly careful because we're so far into the process, or we're so new into the process. But I'm going to try to just speak to the plan based on memory, and then my team can kind of pick it up. But the plan is, first of all, to go through the process that was underlined, in the motion. Our goal would be to begin taking over all of the contracted programs and adding new programs in this fiscal year. Our original goal, I'm sorry, next fiscal year. This one's almost over. I apologize. Yeah, thank you for that clarification. Yeah, no, we're going to do it all this month, and by next fiscal year. My apologies for saying that. Just with the program coordination, but not necessarily the care coordination piece until closer to the end of next fiscal year. So that those case managers, the folks that we talked about, that would come a little bit later and be phased in. We plan on starting with the care coordination at CVK and Barry J. Nidor. Again, this can change as we go through the process, but our plan would be to start with the more intensive services at those two facilities. One, because of our commitment to girls and gender expansive youth, and then two, because quite frankly, it's a smaller facility that will help us work out some of the operational details as we move into the bigger facility, which is Los Padrinos. Beyond that, am I missing any aspects of the plan, Taylor or Patricia? And we have that in writing, and I believe it's in the report back. I know we took a lot out to simplify it because we're so early in the process. We had I don't know, the first report back was like 10, 12 pages, and then we shortened it because we were recognizing that things could change, and we didn't want to put something out there that wasn't necessarily going to be actioned. So, Taylor.
If this is helpful, and you all let us know if it's not, but just at a sort of in summary, building on what David said, at a very high level, the plan is for DYD to transition existing supportive programming in the halls and camps. So we're not talking about clinical programming, we're not talking about educational programming, only sort of youth development programming, supportive programming, transition existing programming to the Department of Youth Development, and also add new programming to fill gaps, to increase the diversity of programming based on the needs and interests of young people, and then to layer on this youth development care coordination element that Patricia mentioned, which involves in our current plan DYD staff who would be present in facilities day in, day out, working with young people to assess their needs as it relates to youth development programming, connect young people to that care, and to support and complement reentry planning and make sure that that happens as early and consistently as possible. And then, as Patricia mentioned, the third element or fourth element, depending on how you're counting the reentry inclusion in the youth development coordination piece that I mentioned, is also working to integrate a strengths-based approach to youth engagement and youth leadership in both the programming itself and in the youth development coordination and reentry planning. Is that helpful?
Yes. A couple follow-up questions. So one is, I appreciate the commitment to collaboration. I also think that it's a real opportunity for leadership and to be bold with things that have not been able to happen for all the reasons that we know and we talk about, and why the board passed this motion and directed DYD to take this over. But in that leadership, for young people who are experiencing programming, what is the plan for continuing with providers or changing them, and what happens to youth, who are working with one organization that DYD may or may not continue. And I also just want to say that reentry, is going to happen for every single kid, right? And we know that even if you're planning and preparing, that first 24 to 48 hours is the most critical time if you need to get back to school. And that it may even be more critical for the kids at LP who haven't had the time to process or go through the actual programming, like youth at CVK or Barry J. You're supposed to report to probation, you're back in school within 24 or 48 hours. Well, that is really hard. That is really hard for some families to navigate and coordinate. And I would just say that reentry component, that on the ground support is really, really, really important. So I would say that, and then go back to my question of what happens, what's the plan for continuum of care for programs that are in the facilities that may change or shift, and how do you plan to approach that?
Sure, I can start and then hand it off to Patricia. But initially, we anticipate on maintaining relationships with the existing providers, unless there's some special circumstance that probation shares with us that would let that contract end, right? But for the most part, we plan on continuing what's there, evaluating. And I think Patricia, in her presentation, talked about we are putting a system in place to evaluate the programs, to make sure, first of all, that they're there when they're supposed to be there for the duration that they're supposed to be there, providing the services that they're meant to provide. We're going to start looking at some of the output data, right, which is certainly not the substantive outcomes that we want to see, but it's a start, right? We want to see, how many kids are in the program, what they're receiving, what the dosage is, et cetera. With that, we really seek to get to that outcomes data that says, how is this young person different after the program than they were before the program, right? And how is this working in community? What are our recidivism rates? Are they reducing, which is, the goal, right, is for young people not to go back into a system, whether it be an adult or a juvenile system. So those are some of the components starting out. Certainly over time, we may discover that some programs are not as effective as we would like to see, in which case those agreements would end, right? And we would bring in someone new to provide whatever type of service that the young people are seeking. Let me hand it off to Patricia because I think she had.
I don't think I.
Oh, you're off.
Did it run out of minutes?
Here you go.
Hello. Okay, yeah, it's working. I don't think I have much to add except to say we're already doing some of this with our credible messenger work and some of the youth development programming that we have sometimes inherited from probation, in fact. And so our team and the probation teams at various facilities that work on programming already work hand in hand to identify ways to make sure that there's continuity in programming and services, whether it's from fiscal year to fiscal year or from one department to another. But of course, as David says, evaluation is key. In fact, this year we've already started to strengthen our program observation and evaluation and data collection methods to better understand what's happening in practice, because what's on the calendar versus what's happening in reality are two different things. So our staff are doing, for instance, random checks on our program providers, and both talking to program staff, instructors, and young people to understand their perspectives on how the sessions went. So I think there's more to come. We are looking forward to working with probation to strengthen all of that.
Thank you. Commissioner Meredith?
I have some questions, none of which you expect, Dave. Okay, first of all, I do come from the 5th District, and it's no secret that Supervisor Barger and much of the 5th District had some real significant concerns about the existing programming that's going on. I mean, significantly. So I just wanted to point that out. And it's no secret that with the LRPs, some of the LRPs I had some concerns about. So when you talk about MOU and budget and all this, I'd just like to make sure we have some kind of checks and accountability and auditing. And I think Patricia may have to sum that up. So that's good. So I have great expectations of you, especially on the reentry program. And I appreciate what Commissioner Harris brought up, because those were my questions too. So thank you.
Thank you. I guess the one thing that I think Patricia maybe alluded to, but I'm hoping gets explicitly named. I know that the chief obtained approval essentially of the depopulation plan, right? Which is essentially musical facilities with kids just being kind of moved around, right? But not, at least at this point, really addressing their underlying needs and getting them out of facilities that are either operating unlawfully or not meeting minimum standards. So my hope is that this is really an effort towards decarceration. And I'm curious how you all see this impacting that. We've heard the fact that like the LADS is something that's only used at intake and it's never reassessed as more information is obtained. It's never brought back to court. The list goes on, right? And so to me, it does seem like there are opportunities to decarcerate that the department isn't using. By department, I mean probation. And so I'm wondering how you see kind of some of this care coordination potentially being like a counter to that, or I don't know, being able to share the progress of a young person in a different way than probation does with the court, so that we can actually talk about getting folks out of facilities that are operating beneath minimum standards.
I'm really glad you brought that point up because that's something I should have mentioned. So as part of this agreement, we will enter into an MOU with probation that will do something extremely exciting. It will allow us to have access to some of the information that was previously unavailable to us under WIC Code 827. So we will be part of multidisciplinary teams, talking about young people, having those conversations about their suitability to be returned to community based on input, that our care coordinators and that our program providers can offer. Also, you all know that, from time to time, I go to court hearings for young people, either to be just support or to provide, some type of information for that young person. And so frequently, all you hear is the negative things that have happened. They were in the shower too long, or they had too many t-shirts, or whatever the case may be. With this, we're excited that we'll be able to provide documents showing different programs that the young person has been participating in to hopefully, kind of show the judge the progress of that young person and provide for them to be returned to community, right? As soon as possible. So we are looking forward to expanding this role and doing exactly what you just described, Commissioner Kakani. So I don't know if anyone else wants to add to that.
I'll just underscore, I think what's in our report back, that if this facility approach is implemented as we would like, it really not only increases young people's overall well-being and development, it reduces the number of incidents and increases the safety inside facilities, but really also it should decrease the length of stay.
Yeah.
Right? Because young people are working more earnestly and focusedly on what it takes to get home. So I hope that, in that sense, it really does facilitate less incarceration or shorter incarceration. I also think, as the board instructed us to do so, to look at community-based care and alternatives wherever possible, that this lifts up some of our other work focused, for instance, on what this commission has paid much attention to on intake, right? So this isn't just about improving what's offered to young people in facilities, but it is also a chance to look at the decision-making around who is there in the first place and continuously revisiting whether they are ready to go home. And so some of the work that the Department of Youth Development is already doing, including in close partnership with the Office OYCR Youth and Community Restoration, to look at intake protocols and processes and implement, for instance, like a daily population review, but like a weekly collaborative process to see what young people are ready to go home. I think there's a chance to intersect all of that work with this model proposal and implementation.
And this is just a little off topic, but I do want to share. We are in constant communication with the juvenile courts now. They commissioned a outside study through a consultant funded by OYCR. Those results will be released to the public, I think, very soon because they've completed their initial analysis of the juvenile landscape. So at that table is the bench, the defense bar, the DA, some of the health serving agencies, probation, us, youth commission, and the conversations have been robust. And in fact, that's where Ray, our reentry program, really got its wheels, right? So the judges have informed us that as you show that progression of the young person, we will provide the least restrictive alternative. So rarely do we talk about the relationship with the juvenile courts, but it is really strengthened over the last year. And this is a component that they actually asked for in the yet unreleased document. In fact, I think they may have taken it out of the action steps because we're already doing it, at this point. So I did want to share that.
Thank you so much.
Can I just have one follow-up question?
I was just going to note Sam in real quick.
Oh.
I would just like the minutes to reflect that Commissioner Sam Prater did join the meeting at 11:08 a.m. Thank you. Go ahead, Commissioner Kakani, and then it'll be Commissioner Shipp and Commissioner Terry.
I just wanted to know what barriers you all have identified and if you've already. I remember when the credible messengers first started entering the facilities, one of the barriers was that while like management may have been in support, it felt like there wasn't really a bringing along of line staff, so they kind of understood what that relationship was and how people could work together. And it resulted in, more tension than necessary and a longer kind of, I don't know, you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct.
And so just kind of wondering what other barriers that you all have identified and maybe ways to work through them so that these timelines that you've identified in this report back can actually be met.
Yeah, so there is at least a page of things that we've identified. And likewise, probation has provided their list of challenges that they see. And those are the source of these meetings, these 3 work group meetings that we're having. Certainly, the money, right, the resources is going to be one major hurdle that we need to overcome. When it comes to even things like space, right, we're describing a number of people that will need a desk and a place to sit. So we're going to have to identify space, especially in facilities that may be challenged with physical space. Certainly, the feeling of the staff at the facility is paramount to our concern, and we don't want to replicate what we saw with Credible Messenger, with a lot of confusion, a lot of anxiety, and some pretty rough situations for the Credible Messengers when they first started. Fortunately, the work groups actually go a couple of levels into not quite operational, not line staff, but operational staff. So we're getting closer, but I think I'm going to hand it over to Patricia because we are working in the facilities directly with those probation officers now to try to prepare as we change roles.
Yes, great question. Really appreciate when it comes to implementation, right? This is where reinforcement and the day-to-day shoulder-to-shoulder work, I think, makes all the difference. It's not something we can cure in a plan or address in one training. When you're really talking about a culture shift, right? So it's in addition to all the like physical space, technology needs that this plan requires. It's all the like design, the clear design approach, the monitoring and evaluation mechanisms. We have had many conversations with leaders in other jurisdictions who try to transform facilities, and it requires engaging staff over and over again to build the buy-in over time. So I know, like joint trainings with DYD staff, providers, and probation and other partners will be important. But as we learned in our Credible Messenger work and our fearless leader over our facility work, Latasha Matthews is here today, who worked with probation for over 2 decades, knows all too well, just because we planned for it doesn't mean the welcome is there from day one. I'm trying to figure out how to say it. But I think we've shown that when we stayed focused on the work and we proved the worth of the work to young people, that our probation colleagues also started to see in real practice what value we could bring. And that wasn't something we could just sort of explain verbally. It just had to sort of take effect over time. And that also means that every day our teams are building relationships, rebuilding relationships, reclarifying expectations, role distinctions, all of that. And then trying to strengthen them over time, right? So we didn't have everything we needed on day one for Credible Messengers, nor did probation, have the preparedness for us. But I do think over time we've built that, and to the point where some of the same skeptical probation officers in those facilities 6 months to a year later came back and really appreciated us and asked for more programming, and asked for more programming in other facilities that Credible Messengers were not yet present at.
One last question about the youth development coordination. I see it here listed. Is that like a term of art? Is there a definition? Is there a framework, a flow chart? This is when we're going to do X?
So I'm going to answer the basic question and then hand it off to Taylor. But the name has changed like 3 times. So as we met with our stakeholders from the health serving departments, we used to call it care coordination. And they came back and said, hey, you know, it really kind of blurs the lines between what we're calling care coordination. So we decided to change the name to youth development coordination. So that is confusing, and that it may not stay that name, right, throughout the duration of the plan. But that's the name. Now, to get to the depth of your question, I'll hand it off to Taylor.
Yeah, and I really appreciate the request for flowchart as a flowchart lover myself. You've heard us say this, and I know this is, you know, not an ideal answer, but I think that is for us the next stage, is to be able to work through these operational details with our partners and be able to, with confidence, say, okay, this is how that role will look in really detailed flow. For now, I think like very high level definition is that we're imagining that these would be folks who would meet with young people, would carry a caseload of young people, would meet with them individually, you know, have sessions, have check-ins, and be really actively working through their caseload to make sure young people are connecting with the programming that helps them, you know, build towards their goals, and specifically their reentry goals, and then to communicate and collaborate with others in the facilities, join MDTs, take on some of that youth engagement work we've described, that kind of thing. And, you know, in terms of educational background, we're working really closely with the county classification compensation team to make sure that we have a solid job description and are clear about how this kind of role aligns with other similar social work and care coordination roles in the county. So we'll share more about what those final requirements are, but are, you know, actively working through as we figure out what the role is. You know, what kind of degree should these folks have? What are the pathways to employment so that there, you know, are opportunities for growth and learning into the role, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'll ask some very brief questions, Chair Canales, if that's okay with you. I have one for the department and then one for DYD as well. First for DYD, can you talk a little bit about, you know, the change for contracting? Contracting is a big lift, and people from the community have asked us and just asked around about how you all are preparing to take on more contracting and programming, and are you getting any resources or help for the probation department on this?
For the question, Commissionership. We are, so again, we're working through the budget, right? But we have been ensured, and I feel confident based on the conversations I've had with probation leadership, that we will be receiving the amount that they have allocated that goes to contracting, right, with organizations. So to that end, I feel very comfortable. Some of the other components of the plan, I'm going to call it care coordination right now, but the care coordination piece, we're going to have to find the resources for. And some of the other parts of the plan, there may be some gaps, some that probation may fill, some that we may have to collectively identify resources in some of the pools that are available, things like JJRBG, you know, things like that. In terms of taking on the contracting, it is extremely important that we have both the on-the-ground staff, right, to evaluate, to support, to work with those contracted agencies, but then also the administrative support on the back end to write the contracts, to send the payment, right? You know, what good is a contract if you don't get your check? You know, so we need those administrative roles. And like as I was mentioning, we anticipate about $1.9 million that we need to cover those administrative roles to maintain the contracts and to maintain a positive experience with those community-based organizations, timely payment being probably at the top of the list, but then followed certainly by the evaluative pieces. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add to that one.
All right, appreciate that. And then for Dr. Corral, this is a non-political, fact-based question. So I was just at Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall, and I went into the compound units, the R1s, the X1s, and specifically with the older kids. They are graduates, and they are, I'm just going to say it, they are bored. They went to school at 10 a.m., 11 a.m. It was around 4 p.m. When we got in the unit, and they had nothing to do. They had no programming all day since they went to school, and they only went to school for an hour. Can you talk, Dr. Corral, a little bit about what the department is doing in the meantime while DYD is doing the pieces and putting it together to take over to make sure that these young people are getting some kind of programming. As you know, when young people are bored or have nothing to do, that creates an environment for them to do whatever they feel like is necessary or whatever they can do in the time being, and that includes drugs. So I think, can you talk a little bit about if there is a plan to bring in some programming right now, or what the department is doing in the meantime to make that happen?
Commissioner Chip, thank you for your question. And yes, we are working to increase programming, especially for the youth in units like R and S, where we have a large number of youth that are graduates. We recently implemented, or actually, we recently started the electronic calendar system at Los Padrinos. And that's something that will help us better track the dosage of programming. And that's something that's also going to be transitioning over to DYD as part of their taking a lead role in programming. And so this was actually a conversation that we had during our meeting last week before the 30-day report back to the board. It's, understanding that there's specialized populations that do need this extra programming. And so as this transition takes place, I think that we certainly need to keep focus on the fact that not all youth follow a traditional schedule where they're in quote unquote high school from 8 to 3, that there are youth that do need additional programming. And so that's something that we are working with. Along with that, we also have the credible messengers that are at the facility. And I know that they're providing services in those units as well. So with a combination of additional contracting, additional contracts, the credible messengers, and really working closely with DYD, we hope to work together with all of the stakeholders to increase programming for the youth, not just in those units, but for the youth throughout our juvenile facilities. I hope that answers your question, Commissioner.
Can I add one thing? You already know this, so it's a different relationship on the dais, but that population holds a special place in my heart. I see those young men monthly, primarily because they are significantly older than the other young people at Los Padrinos, but they're also there for a significantly longer time. Unfortunately, I'm fortunate to have the experience, but unfortunately, I've spent 2 Christmases and 2 Thanksgivings with the same group of young people in a facility where normally it's a 30-day turnaround time. So looking at their circumstances is certainly at the top of my list because they are so unique as compared to the rest of the population at Los Padrinos.
No, I agree. Dr. Corral, just one more question. Can you talk about what has hindered programming in there? I know at one point they had dogs in there, and then I think the next week they were gone, or they were promised construction, virtual training, and then it just never happened. Can you talk about what hinders that, and then also how those promises are being made to the youth, and then not being communicated on the changes to them as well?
Commissioner Ship, thank you once again for the question. I believe that some of those programs are in place. I know that in terms of the dog program, there were some challenges that we're working through right now. The program with, I don't want to mention the provider in this public meeting, but we are working with the programmer to bring that program back to Los Padrinos. One of the primary challenges, and I think Mr. Carroll mentioned this, has to do with space. I was recently at a conference back in the East Coast, and I was talking with folks that were building new facilities. And one of the things that I think that we need to understand is that many of our facilities were not built with programming space in mind, which is different for Kilpatrick. We have specific programming space in mind. Or space that was built with the idea of programming. When it comes to other facilities, we will be working together with DYD to try to identify space within the facility, but understanding that we will need a certain level of flexibility because some of the space may be multi-purpose, some space that's, a classroom during the day becomes programming space in the evening, for example. So these are the things that we're discussing with DYD to ensure that these programs move forward. And as far as the construction program, once again, I won't mention the provider, but that provider is still at Los Padrinos. In fact, they recently expanded over to Barry J. Neidorf as well. And so there's a lot of, let's not call them barriers, but these are opportunities. So working together with DYD, I think that it's certainly an opportunity to expand many of the offerings with youth feedback, with stakeholder feedback. We hope to really bring the type of program, because many of these programs are there and they are taking place. Our goal is to make sure that these programs are consistent and that these programs are meaningful and impactful to the young people that we serve.
No, that's perfect. I think just a suggestion for me to probably both of you is just, number one, don't promise the youth anything if you cannot continue it. I think that has been the hardest thing for them, is that they wait for something for 10 weeks to 12 weeks and it never pops up and they're still doing the same thing over and over again. And then my second is just to continue it. Like you said, there are these programs happening. It's just not happening for the same units all the time. And so they're wondering what happened. They had it one day and we hear that it's still happening. And I asked them, hey, well, they tell us it's still happening and they haven't seen it again. And so now I'm explaining what's going on in the department. So I think that just don't promise them anything that we cannot make good on. And then the second, trying to continue what we do. Even if it comes one time, it should come multiple times. They should have a continuum of programming.
Thank you. Commissioner Terry?
I had a question for the DYD team. What role is there for families in kind of this broader conversation around reentry planning and care coordination? In addition to, what role is there for youth to be able to, have like a real meaningful voice and input in this process?
And then hand it off. But certainly, censoring youth is extremely important as they identify, similar to what Commissioner Shipp was talking about. They'll tell you, what types of programs they need. They'll tell you which ones that are working for them. They'll tell you which ones they're not interested in. Certainly, Director Julian and I have had conversations about, what kid is going to say they want to do math, for example. So we recognize that some of the programs might not be their favorite, but we know that those programs are in their best interest. But certainly trying to center their wants and needs, at the top of the list. In terms of the family engagement, I can hand it off to my team to describe a little bit more.
I'll add that, in the last year, as we've piloted Reentry Action for Youth, which I think we came here to present about, as a reminder, it's now 19 providers that comprise a network and provide young people with a mentor, case management, linkages to services, flexible supports. The flexible supports piece has been amongst the most important pieces of the reentry work, and it supports young people as well as families. And so that work absolutely centers not just the young people, but really, when implemented best, engages the young people, the whole family unit, and understands, how to stabilize and strengthen the young person as well as the family. And I think, frankly, also there's more room to strengthen that, right? I think some providers are more family focused and inclusive of the family than others, but really, when we see some of the best utilization of the services and the impact on the young people is when the whole family is engaged or caregivers are engaged.
Yeah, that was going to be the point that I was going to make, that, we talk about DYD, but it's really our providers, right? And those are the folks who are trusted by the young people, by the families in the community. And most of them have a very, very strong family commitment. I just was at, I think it was Barry J, where ARC, I guess I'm not supposed to say the names of the orgs, had a graduation, and the parents were there, and these young people had completed a conflict resolution curriculum, and then some had completed a family, it was family social emotional course, and they got to hear their young people describe the process. There were grandparents, aunts, uncles, there were tears from both the mentors as well as the young people and their parents. And then they got to share a wonderful meal. And that was all put on in partnership with probation, but by the provider. And a lot of our providers have those really strong family engagement components, which I think is important because we want them to be excited for their young person to get home, right? Not dreading the day that they have, the young person back in their house. So I don't know if that helps at all, but it's certainly an important component.
Yeah, and just related to that, because I'm looking at Directive 8, which is around the establishing of accountability metrics. Will providers and youth and families be able to have a say in what some of those metrics of success are? Because I do think a lot of times, kind of looking at some of the departments like DMH and SAPC, they have very traditional notions of what success means. But I think those providers and I think the youth would maybe have a different set of metrics they're looking at. So will they have voice in that process?
You go ahead.
Yes, so we are actually in the midst, as you know, all of this is in an early stage in development of developing a community engagement strategy, and that leans a lot on providers and advocacy organizations that engage young people and families. And so we will make sure that that is centered in those community engagement strategies and open doors to really weigh in on the whole model development, including what outcomes are measured.
And in our diversion program, for example, one of the indicators that we're excited about in that evaluation is the relationship with family and trusted caregivers. So it is a component of work that we're already doing, but certainly making sure that it's directly involved in this particular initiative.
Thank you. Commissioner Prater, I believe you have a question.
Yeah, I think that Commissioner Terry kind of got to the heart of what I was going to ask about the assessment and how we are measuring success, the ways of knowing. I know that a lot of times we're working with our partners who are actually doing the programming, I think there's a difference between sort of like keeping youth focused or busy or occupied, and programming for the sake of programming versus programming towards a particular outcome. Right. And I think that this is where I'm excited. I'm really appreciate the intentionality with how you've structured this. I'm looking for more of like a logic model for IYE. Maybe I missed that part in the earlier presentation, but it helps me understand better the inputs, the activities, the outputs, all those kind of things so we can better understand where exactly DYD is taking programming. I think will be really, really helpful to know beyond just sort of like there's lots of programming happening. There's a full calendar, right, of things scheduled. But then how do we know that the programming, the type of programming is moving folks towards healing, towards rehabilitation, and towards this idea of readiness and reintegration, right? Is there a tool, a validated tool that you all are using to assess like when someone is ready to be released into community and how programming is connected to that? And so I just want to kind of pick up or really underscore what Commissioner Terry was talking about, like would love to see the logic model and how this is being assessed, but super excited about what we've read so far. And it sounds like you guys are really being intentional and thoughtful about how this is all going to flow. So thank you for that.
I mean, and I did touch on a little bit of that in terms of we'll start with the outputs, right? Just making sure that young people are in the programs and then lead towards the outcomes, with the main outcome being, are they more prepared to be living in community after this programming than they were before? In terms of documentation, we will certainly continue to send you updates on the plan and the model once it is solidified with our other county partners, probation and the other county partners. We're happy to provide that. We've got some of it in a draft form right now, but we're just kind of holding on to it until it's solidified. But
Yeah, just to add, and thank you again for the question, Commissioner Prater. One of those, just to be very specific, one of those things we have a draft of is a logic model. So we would love to share and refine together, offer it for folks to react to, make sure we're checking our assumptions exactly as you said, and really making sure that it feels right, the theory of change of what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I know that's kind of like nerdy and all, and I appreciate sort of like that, just because honestly it gives a framework for anyone who's engaged in the reentry work for our young people. Like you all can be a model for all of us to follow about how we are really being, again, thoughtful, intentional, and how we are actually assessing and evaluating the change that we are seeking to make. And so thank you for thinking about that already, and happy to kind of see it when you guys are ready.
Thank you so much. And so we will take a final question from Commissioner Jackson, and then we will move on for public comment.
I just would like to know how the commission can support DYD in the development of the plan, the execution of it, the implementation. Like, how can we be helpful to you?
Say today was helpful. We were really looking forward to presenting it because we know that you will really provide a detailed analysis and help us to identify blind spots, right? We'll continue, like I said, to send the documentation to the commission through Director Julian. We welcome any input that you can offer. Of course, if we run into any roadblocks that we have trouble overcoming, we certainly will reach out for your input and discussion on those also. Other ideas? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. And we're really excited too to be working together. I think this is going to make a significant shift in reentry and with the transitioning to the LRPs, which I know there's been some questions and concerns about. So thank you so much. And Wendy, Director Julian, I'll pass it over to you.
I'm not sure I can respond to that with a straight face. We're going to go on to public comment. If you'd like to make public comment in the room, please approach the podium. And if you want to make public comment online, use the raise your hand function or dial *3 on your phone. We have a couple of people signed up. Anybody in the room want to make public comment? Seeing none, we have one caller. So we'll start with our caller. Sorry, I already lost the number. Your number starts, call-in user number 3 starts with 323. Dial *6 and you can unmute yourself.
Yes, good morning again.
Good morning.
This is Mel again. I just had, well, first of all, greetings, Brother Carol. I'm really glad that you touched on one of the questions I had to deal with OYCR and the court. So I really appreciate that you touched on those. Two of the things I wanted to find out, when we're doing this transition, and I know you spoke about the continuity, is there a specific time frame that this strategic plan for transitioning takes place? Is it like 3 months, 6 months, a year? And I ask because, then we're going to need to make sure that we're looking at whatever evidence-based practices to identify that it is transitioning the way that you want it to transition, or the way that you expect for it to transition, I should say. And then lastly, as you may know, I work with a group of, I had a kid who was in the Kappa League, and we had needed to get a hold of DYD, and I know I've mentioned it before, but I really do think it's important that a phone number is established, because everybody doesn't email or has access or time to wait for an email response in real time. And I say that because you all are needed. Probation, we no longer has the 601 clients or walk-ins, so it's a gap that is needed. But otherwise, thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, Mel.
So, Mel, I would ask if you could send me your information. Okay. Director Julian says she can get your information to me, so I'll reach out to you, after this meeting. So, just wanted to say that the timeline it's fluid. I mean, we're working through it now. But Taylor, do you want to speak to the timeline just quickly?
Sure. David mentioned this earlier, I think, but the timeline will be implemented in phases. You hear us, I think, all today talking about how important it is for us to get this right, to be thoughtful about our approach and our collaboration. So in phases through the next year or so from around July of 2026 to around July of 2027 is the first sort of implementation phase, happening in stages, informed by collaboration and the operational needs of the facilities and the young people there.
Don't want to replicate again the distrust and the confusion that happened with Credible Messenger, over 3 years ago. So we're going to be very intentional about notification so that people know, what's happening and when, including the providers, so that they know, exactly what's going on, and they're part of the timeline themselves.
Okay, thank you so much. So with that, commissioners, is there any closing comments or questions before we thank the panel and then take a short break? Okay, with that, panelists, thank you very much for your presentation and answering all our questions today. We will take a 10-minute break. So we will return at 11:51 and 19 seconds. Counts. And so now at 11:52 a.m., we are going to start back up the meeting, starting with the next agenda item, which was agenda item number 4, but we moved things around. So now it's agenda item number 5. And that is to discuss and take possible action on an update from Probation's Juvenile and Adult Field Services Bureau to explain caseload data and identify which aspects of field services have been identified as able to be performed by non-sworn probation assistants. We have attached several related documents under this agenda item. Some are new and some are provided for reference and comparison from prior POC meetings. The Probation Department was asked to provide information which is attached to the agenda. One is a report on updated caseload numbers for juvenile and adult field services. And the second attachment is a job description for the probation assistant position. Here to present today are from the probation is Heath Larson, Director Field, and Deputy Director for Adults, David Wolfs Gruber. Thank you, and I will pass it over to you now.
Thank you. Thank you, and good morning, everyone. My name is Dave Wolfsgruber. As the chair said, I'm Director of Field Services. We recently assumed supervision of Juvenile Field as well. And I just want to begin by reiterating some of the comments previously and some of the chief's prior comments about how proud I am of Field Services and also some of our institutional staff that I've been fortunate to meet. I come from leading 2 significant statewide supervision authorities and client supervision, and it's very gratifying to have conversations with staff that really come to work, folks that come to work every day, show the compassion, the commitment, and the dedication to quality supervision in challenging times in field supervision and in our halls and our camps. So I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that to begin. So you've asked us to present on caseload numbers, and as you're reviewing our caseload numbers across all of our disciplines, AB 109, core, and then juvenile field, I want to touch upon some of the things we've done in probation to mitigate against recent assignments of staff and how we're really being more intentional in field supervision. So as I mentioned, 2 very large and challenging and complex supervision authorities are in my past, and first and foremost, field supervision is critically important, and it's something we're expanding greatly within the probation department. We've taken some staff that have been reassigned, 43 DPOs and 8 SDPOs, to provide field supervision, to be more intentional, to be present in our clients' residence, to observe the family unit for those that have family members that they're residing with, to be there for the services that they may need, whether it be substance use disorder treatment, mental health treatment, employment, housing, everything along those lines, to be more intentional in supervision and not waiting for someone to come into an office where they're desperate for services. So we're being proactive and being in our communities. And not only that, but for the family members as well, because it's reentry is a very complex, collaborative process that many times involves the family unit as well. So it's important for our officers to be there in addition to performing law enforcement functions that we are obligated to provide to ensure public safety, residence checks and things of that nature. But first and foremost, our ability to mitigate some of the recent reassignments and of staff to the juvenile facilities, it's been critical for us to be more present. A couple other things I want to touch upon on how we're reimagining supervision is utilizing the Microsoft Teams platform. We've got a lot of transportation challenges that we've worked closely with JCOD to help mitigate against, but also working collaboratively with our community providers, whether it be HR 360, Health Right 360, and AB 109. but also the system navigators within our core or traditional formal probation is going to be critical as well to provide those services. Clients can certainly still come to an office if they need a service and support, but we're utilizing the Microsoft Teams platform to be more intentional again, and allowing that video connection for those that aren't able to make it into our offices, and also deal with some of the staffing challenges we have. And again, to mitigate some of the staffing challenges, we have kiosk reporting as well. I think you may be familiar with our kiosk reporting that we've had for a number of years that we're going to utilize as well. But the hallmark to these challenges is to be more intentional, present for our clients, and to listen first and make those connections. And having a greater presence in the field is a main emphasis of that change in structure, again, to deal with and mitigate against the recent reassignments of staff. I'm happy to take any questions. I don't see it up on the screen, but with respect to the AB 109 caseload numbers, I've provided the juvenile field caseload numbers as well. Okay. Okay. So I'm happy to pause and take any questions on caseloads first and foremost.
Yes, Commissioner. Okay. Sorry. Just curious what your experience with field supervision is, or like what your background is.
Sure. Thank you for that question. So for 38 years, I worked at the New Jersey State Parole Board. I ended my career as executive director overseeing 450 sworn and 200 civilian staff members, a significantly challenged population. We had about 16,500 individuals under supervision when I left. About 11,000 of them were sex offenders. New Jersey has one of the most stringent sex offender laws in the nation. So individuals in lieu of probation come to parole. So they receive parole supervision for life. So that was a very challenging population in a number of ways to make sure that we provide sex offender treatment, to make sure that we're properly supervising and aware of the activities of individuals on supervision for a sexual offense. We also had a significant number of clients on global positioning supervision. And New Jersey led the nation, quite frankly, and I'm very proud of our efforts to reduce the prison population from 31,000 around the year 2000 to when I left to about 12,000. So I firmly believe in quality client supervision. And then we were very present in the communities, as I mentioned before, and I'm sorry to continue to hammer this point home, but field supervision is critically important to understand the needs and to observe individuals in their home environment, both for compliance and for quality services that we have the ability to provide and connections and to meet people where they are. And then I was fortunate after 38 years in New Jersey to become the director of parole for the Colorado Department of Corrections. So we also oversaw inmates in that system as well. So again, a very challenging population, resource challenged, and the ability to work collaboratively with our officers to make sure that whether it be an inmate, because we also had about 1,000 inmates under our supervision in community corrections, to make sure they're provided for in community corrections and also in the community. And it's critical to understand that quality supervision, providing significant services, but also reducing the returns to prison for technical parole violations is what needs to be done throughout every system, whether it's parole or probation. We demonstrated in New Jersey particularly that reducing the number of technical returns to prison, as well as individuals that are convicted of a new crime on parole, made the public safer. So not the supervision that parole and probation used to displace, I'd say 25 years ago, of kind of waiting for the person to make a mistake and then return them to prison for a technical violation, to be as intentional as we can and provide those services, whether it be licensed residential substance use disorder treatment, outpatient substance use disorder treatment, mental health treatment, to make sure that we are providing every opportunity for success rather than looking for every opportunity for failure. So that was the key ingredients to what led New Jersey to be a leader in reducing incarceration. And I'm very proud of that. And I'm looking to continue that at LA County Probation.
Okay, thank you for that. So I'm just looking at these numbers, and I feel like we kind of end up here every time, just in terms of the average caseload size. I mean, I think of dual supervision youth maybe as some of the young folks who have, you know, the fewest kind of like or access to the fewest number of like consistent adults in their life, either being in foster care and then also having to be in the probation systems. And so I'm seeing like ratios here for dual supervision youth at the rate of 61 youth to 1 PO. So I'm just curious, kind of like how the DPOs who are holding those caseloads are managing, if you know. And then related to that, you know, I think when we're talking to defense counsel, a lot of them say that the young folks that they're working with have no idea who their POs are. It's not clear. They're calling the office or whatever hotline to figure out what probation officer is supposed to be, in quotes, supporting them, and that it takes a month or two to then determine who that probation officer is. So I appreciate kind of like the intention with which you started, but it doesn't really sound like it's happening here. So I, yeah, would love to know how you foresee getting there.
Sure.
You can share that.
So I'll start and Mr. Larson will discuss the terms and conditions of supervision and how we're supervising the juvenile population. So I've worked with the juvenile population for my entire career. So I've got significant experience on the needs and challenges of the population. But to your point of how do we supervise in this environment with these caseload numbers, I think I just want to say one area that the reassignments were a little lighter, shall we say, is with the juvenile population, recognizing the vulnerability and the importance to provide those services and to make sure that when the family unit calls for it, that those individuals remain with the family unit and that they're a big part of supervision. So I do want to mention that the juvenile DPOs and SDPOs remain in the community in larger numbers for those very reasons. But I want to allow Mr. Larson to comment on his experience with this population in LA County.
I think I figured out how to turn this on. Just like we recently reassigned a whole bunch of staff to our juvenile halls, we've also done some reorganization within our field. So, thank you. If you go back a month and a half, I had 6 full duty staff and 13 light duty staff to supervise all these folks. I now have 22. And as Ms. Carlisle said earlier, 22 plus an additional 20 full duty staff. So I have an additional 20 staff to accomplish what you're asking, supervising these folks. And we're also looking to hire a few more of these light duty staff that are on. I'm pretty confident that we have enough staff to accomplish it. They may not be in the right positions today because they're reassigned in the office that they were formerly assigned to. So we need to move them to different offices to make sure we accomplish seeing everybody and making sure that everybody is supervised and everybody has a contact and there's some continuity within that supervision. But I'm confident we can do it. In addressing the dual supervision aspect of it, that's a very transient population. And it's hard. I certainly don't have the staff to follow them around, but I think we can utilize the folks that are in our area offices and train them on how to work with DCFS so that those folks can also have a consistent probation officer that they can contact regularly. One of the things that's changed is we're no longer deploying or people are leaving regularly, right? They would come in for a 90-day cycle and then go home. So they had a probation officer for 90 days and then they didn't. Now they're going to be in the office and they're going to be there. So the continuity of having somebody regular to contact is going to be there. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Commissioner Jackson and then Commissioner Meredith.
Hello. So I got a call from a mom this weekend in the South LA area. She has a 17-year-old son, special needs, and she shared that over the last year, she's had a very hard time getting a probation officer to come out to her home to do the checks. At one point, she did share that when her son was on an ankle monitor, that was the most consistent and effective support that she had experienced, and she had really wished I mean, not that he was on an ankle monitor, but that he would have the support that he needed, and it's just not there. In that amount of time, which is probably about a year and some change, she said that he was arrested twice more on gun charges. And so all of that has led to her feeling that he doesn't have the support that he needs, but more importantly, unsafe in her own home. He's not like he carries guns, and she recently found opioids in his possession, and all of that has led to her getting a metal detector in her own home and bringing cans of Narcan in her home, and all of this is the result of failed field supervision. And so I'm wondering how your intentionality and your proactivity is going to reach her household.
If you're asking if we have been failing over the last year, absolutely. But again, I have an additional 12 probation officers that I can now put into, 12 plus 8. I have an additional 20 probation officers that I can now put into the community in whatever, areas that I need to put them in. Is that going to be where we can go out and see everybody in the home? It's not. I don't have those kind of numbers. But we should be able to see everybody. They should be able to call somebody. It should be my probation officer didn't disappear because he had to go home because the 90 days are up, or he got deployed and now he's gone to juvenile hall, right? There should be, hey, this number is going to be good, and we should be able to call somebody and they can answer and they'll be able to respond and provide some resources. That's what I think we can do moving forward.
But it makes her home nor the community any more safer, really, because you're expecting families to go to you instead of meeting them where they are, correct?
Yes. Now, are there opportunities for us to get out into the community? Yes, but we certainly can't see every kid in their home. I don't have that type of capacity.
Thank you.
Commissioner Meredith.
A couple concerns. Understanding we have adult and juvenile jurisdiction in this committee and from the department. One of the concerns I have, it'll be 4 years ago on June 14th that 2 El Monte police officers were slain by a probationer that had gone unchecked, unseen, for a variety of reasons. And I know we're understaffed. We're trying to rob Peter to pay Paul. I believe now we have a contract or an MOU with LA Impact. And also, are we working with our allied agencies to get some support for following up? But with the light duty staff that have been deployed home because they can't be in the office, I understand they can't be in the field making contacts, but if they're in the office, they would be there to answer phones, to follow up, maybe do the drug testing or whatever. So I'm just kind of looking for some guidance or thoughts or what I can do to push the levers with the board to make it happen.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I do want to mention that we now have, as Ms. Carlisle mentioned in her presentation, a greater number of our modified staff returning to duty. And I want to just take a little issue with my colleague. We are to a point where we believe we can be more present in the communities. I believe we can be more present in our approach and be as efficient as possible, whether that be utilizing the Teams platform in greater numbers to make sure we're seeing as many people as we have with being staff challenged. But if you look at the overview of our caseload numbers, we actually have as many DPOs in the office. Now, the difference is they're modified staff versus full duty staff because they've been reassigned. But I just want to reassure the commission that we are doing everything we possibly can to not only be intentional as far as our approach to field supervision, but also to make sure that we will meet the clients on their terms, whether it be physically in the office, whether it be with the family in the home, or in the community events that our officers are aware of and can attend, and also utilizing our mobile resource units to be in the communities that, individuals may be challenged as far as getting to an office or not knowing how to get a service. So we're trying to immerse as many services as possible to make sure that we're intentional. We're also, to your point, Commissioner, we're also utilizing the MOU, which you mentioned, to work with local jurisdictions to do those home contacts, residence checks, and to be more present in the community. I know I'm repeating myself, but it bears repeating to demonstrate how proactive we're going to be as far as being a presence in the community and not wait for someone to come to the office. Office reporting is fine to demonstrate compliance, to make sure that the individual is responsibly coming in, but we can't wait, quite frankly, a lot of times for office reporting. We need to be out in the communities. We need to be in the residents. We need to observe them, not only to provide service and support, but also to observe them in the home environment if they happen to be violating the conditions of supervision. So your point is well taken about collaborating with law enforcement partners, but that is something we're already moving towards in greater numbers with this reassignment of our staff to our community supervision team in our communities.
I think this is, oh, it's working. Claire. Mr. Wolf Scrubber and Mr. Larson. So, I'm looking at this. You guys provided us a one-pager broken down by office, total number of DPO2s assigned, and then total summary of active supervision cases, and then average number of active supervision cases per DPO2. And I guess what I want to hear from you is two things. What is the ideal staffing ratio for a DPO2 and a youth caseload? I'm just keep it on the juvenile side for now, and a youth caseload. And then what is the ideal model of service? And how do those two things correlate?
Ideally, for juveniles, I'd like to see a 1-65 ratio. As far as a model, we certainly need to provide an assessment up front, find out what their risks are, to find out what their needs are, develop a case plan and a plan of care for what we think resources and services and how we should deal with that young person and their family. Enact the case plan, and if it's a failure, the same way you change the hypothesis in 9th grade science class, we change the case plan. Now we have limited time, so information gathering is critical, right? We see a kid maybe cumulatively total of 6 hours over a year, right? Half an hour, maybe a month. So gathering all that information up front to find out exactly what it is that we need to service is pretty critical. So making sure that our chronos and our court reports contain as much information as we can. So if there is somebody, the family moves or somebody else takes over, they're not trying to recreate something that's already there, that they can piggyback on whatever information is there. And then assist them with completing their conditions of probation and lowering their risk scores.
Thanks. Why, a couple technical questions. Why right now is nobody assigned at the South Central office? I assume you're planning on remedying that?
Yeah, so the 22 people that were reassigned to the office that they were formerly at. So I haven't, and that's exactly when you guys asked for the data. So I didn't want to come in already with, yeah, this isn't accurate, right? So Yes, we're going to move folks. I do have 2 probation assistants at the South Central office.
Okay.
One person has already been hired, a light duty person, to come to the South Central office. That's in addition to the numbers that I already have here. But there are some other offices that are going to need some support.
And what about the Re-Entry Opportunity Center? There's a high number there.
It's a very high number there. There are 2 more people that have been hired to go there that haven't started yet, but they're light duty people that we're waiting for their doctor's notes to clear and for them to start at the reentry center.
Thank you, commissioners. Any other questions?
I just have a quick.
Yeah, assigned, sorry, not.
Commissioner Prater, go ahead, and then Commissioner Terry.
Sorry, Commissioner Harris, can you just clarify, the question you asked was about what is the ideal caseload ratio?
Yeah.
And the answer to that is 1 to 65? Okay, maybe I'm understanding this, I'm missing something here, but I'm looking at this on the juvenile supervision side. Maybe I'm reading the wrong data point? But prior to the 60-day deployment, the average sort of like caseload was 1 to 17, right? It's on this sheet that looks like this. And then it says, as of 3/26 of last year, 25, the ratio was 49 youth to 1 staff. And you're saying, that ideally the numbers would be higher, and that is a more ideal situation. Can you just explain? I'm just confused with why, if we saw that there were fewer youth being assigned to a particular staff person, and then you're suggesting, unless I'm, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but that it should be 65 to 1.
So Director Julian just pointed me to the data that was provided in April. That included of last year, a number of staff that are in our camp community placement. This is just field supervision. So we're delinking. I only have field supervision in my area. So this data includes camp community placement, regular camp community placement, community transition services. Not all of those staff are on our overview so that we provided. So I'm just, field services is what I'm responsible for. But I will say that it's difficult. There's no nationwide standard for caseload ratios. There's best practices, and it depends on the population as well. Because if you've got a high-risk population on GPS, the caseload numbers are going to be low. So the number provided by Mr. Larson is an approximation of a best practice in a supervision model. And then for adults, a best practice for a supervision model is somewhere around 75 to 1, but that is a generic nationwide standard. It doesn't look into the particulars of each population. For individuals that might have behavioral health concerns, for instance, those caseloads will be a little bit lower.
Yeah, and have we established here locally in LA County what the appropriate model should be and what that number? I know that you mentioned a nationwide sort of assessment, but like what does, given the landscape and the population that exists in our county, do you have any insight on what you believe the model should be and what the ratio should be?
I would say those numbers are pretty consistent. The national numbers are pretty consistent with it. I'm not aware of a LA County best practice for supervision, but I would say that the nationwide best practice is something that is in the area of, like I said, about a 65 to 1, 75 to 1. And then, of course, you go down to the caseloads and determine, a GPS caseload, which is more supervision intense, might be a little lower in terms of those numbers, but that's an approximation of a best practice that would be consistent with a jurisdiction, whether it be my experience in New Jersey and Colorado and now LA versus LA specific. I'm not aware that there's been a caseload ratio designation in LA County or put forth as a best practice.
Okay.
But those are, I can just give you the national trends as well as my experience for 41 years in individuals under supervision.
And do you have like the GPS data for youth? I see it listed here for adult. I see it for adult AB 109, post-release services. I thought I saw the GPS listed.
Yeah. Yes, it's the, the bottom
This
of
is
the-
like in 4-point font. I need a magnifying
I
glass
know,
to
I
see
know,
this. So
I apologize for
apologize.
that. That's how it came out. I apologize for the, it's about 30 on the caseload.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Terry?
I wanted to clarify something you were saying about the MOUs with law enforcement, because they were going to be helping to do visits at the home, right? So were you saying that has started or it hasn't started yet?
It has started, Commissioner, yes. We are working closely with our law enforcement partners. It was a little bit of a challenge to get it started, but we have started that partnership with our law enforcement partners to go out to the residences, to do residence checks and home visits, to augment what we're now doing, as I mentioned, with the staff that we've deployed to the field to make sure that not only are they looking at the requirements and the needs of our population, but also make sure that they're complying with the terms of supervision, and also those that aren't in compliance to do a residence check to see what's happening in their home environment.
Are you able to, I know it's many different numbers, but able to speak to what those caseloads are like? And is this a strategy that the department is going to continue to put funding behind?
I have to get back to you as far as the numbers, but yes, it is our ongoing strategy. Yeah, I'll have to get back to you with the actual numbers of folks that we've supervised and established residence contacts through those MOUs.
Are they clearly identifying, is there communication prior with the probationer that you've contracted with law enforcement? And so like a sheriff's car might pull up, but it's actually a probation check, or, I mean, it just seems kind of with a patrol car pulling up that there could be some like confusion, that maybe they're there for something else.
Yeah, so traditionally they've been going with our officers. So it's clear that when they're approaching a residence, that it is a probation initiative, and it is a probationer that's sanctioned and a visit that's sanctioned through the probation office in collaboration with law enforcement. So traditionally they have been accompanying the law enforcement staff to ensure that the individuals are aware that it is a probation visit and not a law enforcement contact per se.
Thank you, commissioners.
Well, if a probation officer is present, why do we need law enforcement?
It's really just an ongoing collaboration with both sides, also a community presence to make sure that our staff are working collaboratively with our law enforcement partners on residence checks. A lot of these are residence checks where an individual might be in violation of the terms and conditions of their supervision. So they're accompanying our officers. Not always. It's not always a situation where a probation officer is accompanying them, but there are certain situations that the officer knows the particular case, and it's in the best interest of public safety to have those officers accompany our officers. We're in the process of reviewing that collaboration with law enforcement, but with our deployment of our full duty sworn staff, that's going to allow us to be more present in the community. But in not every instance, to answer your question, not every instance does the MOU result in a probation officer with, but in a lot of cases, to answer the chair's question, in a lot of cases, they're accompanied by a DPO just for the purposes of collaboration. It's our case, quite frankly, not the law enforcement jurisdiction's case. So we're collaborating intentionally with our law enforcement partners with respect to the MOU.
So law enforcement is usually involved when they're not involved when it's like one of those proactive residence checks that you guys talked about. It's usually in response to something, namely a violation.
It's a little bit of both, but mostly to what you're mentioning, the residence checks where there's been a violation that's been determined, more so than the proactive field visits that we're now doing with our community supervision team.
Commissioner Meredith, and then Commissioner Kakani.
Yeah, I obviously have an implicit bias in this coming from the world of law enforcement, so I'll put that on the table. A lot of times law enforcement can do compliance checks without probation. And a lot of times they do this, and it's a matter of making sure they're meeting the conditions of probation and seeing what services they can provide. Many of the cities we have in this county do have services that they do work with probationers and parolees to provide that. And there is a factor of safety coming in. Like I say, on June 14th, 2023, 2 El Monte police officers are killed by a probationer. Unfortunately, that does happen. As much as I want to say we can save every probationer, I know that's not possible, but we do have an obligation to public safety.
Oh, sorry. I was just wondering, we received this document from, I don't know if you can see it, this one, that talks about the juvenile supervision ratios between intensive gang supervision, regular supervision, camp community transition placement. We have it for 2024, 2025. I don't think we have it broken down this way for 2026. So if we could get that, I think it would be helpful. Because presumably regular supervision, school-based supervision is okay if it's a higher caseload, whereas intensive gang supervision should be lower because it requires more intensive support. And then with that support, people can get off probation quicker. So if we could just get an updated table that mirrors what we've received for the prior 2 years, that would be helpful. And then I just want to go back to this law enforcement
Commissioner,
contract.
really quick, would you like to make a motion on that?
Sure. I would like to make a motion to receive updated data on juvenile supervision breakdown that mirrors the way we received the data in 2024 and 2026.
I second that motion.
Okay. Now we take a vote? Okay, go ahead, keep on.
Okay, and I want to go back to this law enforcement contract. 'Cause I'm looking to my notes, and it seems like that contract with LA Impact was different than what you were stating. And so I'm just quoting what I wrote down from the chief saying we're not contracting out probation work. But it sounds like when you're doing residence checks, that is probation work, or is it not? And then it says it's an MOU with government entities to capture when they have contact with our probationers. And so I think he goes on to talk about how when they have that contact, this information is then logged somewhere such that probation officers have access to it and then can better support folks. But I'm not hearing you say that at all. It sounds like it's just the cops and probation officers head into someone's house to be like, hey, you're in violation.
No. And thank you for the ability to clarify if I was not clear. It's a collaboration between our law enforcement partners and probation officers to be present in the residences of individuals under supervision. So it's not a gotcha. It's in some cases, it's a residence check, but we need the officer on site in a lot of cases, in most cases, to then establish that contact and that relationship with the individual under supervision. And then we also need our officers present in those visits to make sure that we're documenting the visit as properly as we possibly can. Not every case is going to involve an officer and a law enforcement partner. Some cases it's a law enforcement partner agency that is visiting the residents to be more present in the community, like I said before. But it's not designed to be a gotcha. It's really an ongoing collaboration with our law enforcement partners to make sure we're as intentional as we possibly can be in the community.
All right. Okay.
So Executive Director Julian has told me I have about 10 minutes. So I want to go over the probation assistant position in relation to sworn DPO. I know there was some questions about what the responsibilities of a probation assistant and how they differ. And I'll go through this relatively quickly and save some time for questions. So clearly, probation assistants are not sworn officers, but there are a lot of responsibilities that they can perform. The sworn officer, in a nutshell, conducts investigations, supervises probationers, enforces court orders, makes formal recommendations to the court, and then exercises custodial authority whenever necessary. The non-sworn probation assistant provide administrative, analytical, and operational support to sworn personnel. They don't possess peace officer authority. They're not authorized to independently perform duties that involve enforcement, legal decision-making, or formal supervision of probationers. And then some of the duties of a probation assistant: information and research, documentation support, analysis and assessment, client services coordination, and operations and program support. And these are the items that are prohibited. I won't outline all of them, but they're in your packet if you'd like to review them. These are prohibited functions of a probation assistant: independently managing or supervising probation and so forth. Those are left to our sworn DPO and SDPO title series. They support the work of sworn staff. They don't replace the authority, accountability, or decision-making responsibilities of peace officers. So in a nutshell, the DPO 2 positions are sworn peace officers with legal authority to supervise, enforce, and make court-related decisions. Probation assistants are non-sworn professionals who provide essential administrative, analytic, and operational support. And then all duties requiring peace officer authority or court accountability must remain with sworn personnel. And then this is not an exhaustive listing, but a relatively complete listing of responsibilities that probation assistants can perform, and then items that they can't perform that we would rely on our sworn staff to perform. As Ms. Carlisle mentioned previously, they're an essential part of being able to provide supervision to individuals to augment the supervision provided by the sworn staff. While they can't supervise clients per se, they can certainly assist the DPO and SDPO, primarily the DPO, but also working collaboratively with all of our sworn personnel to prepare, not file, but prepare court reports, for instance, assist the DPO in preparing, and then ultimately the DPO would file those court reports, and a variety of tasks that are critical to mitigate, our staffing concerns, in the field, that we're providing as much support to the individuals under supervision and also support to our DPO staff, with the caseloads that they currently have.
Ms. Carlisle, you may still be around for this, but what happens to someone if someone is being reassigned into a probation assistant position because of that modification, light duty, et cetera? I think I heard you say that that is in the world of possibility, that you all are potentially reassigning people. A, did I hear that correctly? And B, what happens, what's the pay differential, and what happens if someone is in a sworn role but can no longer do the duties of a sworn officer, if I'm remembering what you said correctly? And then, how does that work? And that feels like it would be an issue for people if somehow they went into this role and they'd been in it at a different level.
So I don't want to take too much time away from the overall presentation, but yes, the probation assistant position was approved by the board back in June of 24. We started using it to reassign some of our staff to alternate positions in February of 25. We're doing that through the reassignment process. So just briefly, and I know I have touched on this in other presentations, but just briefly, there are times where people can no longer perform a certain function. And under all of the regulations, EEOC guidelines, ADA. When someone cannot perform one job, but they are able to perform a different job, then we have the obligation to offer them anything that they qualify for as an alternative. Now, in the county for sworn, well, actually for all of the staff in the county, under certain retirement plans, they can be assigned to a different lower level item and actually receive a differential. That's handled through the retirement process. But you're absolutely right. The probation assistant, being a non-sworn position, has lesser responsibilities, lesser obligations, and therefore the pay is a little bit less. That's not impacting the staff for the most part that we're reassigning, because they do pick up this retirement supplement. But some staff it could impact. Unfortunately, if someone can't perform a particular job, the other option is, a medical release or something. We don't want to do that. We don't want to lose that talent. But this is a process that's been happening for many years, reassigning. And unfortunately, in the past, we really only had clerical support positions, other much lower level positions. So this, the probation assistant is really a win-win for the department, in that we can take, like I said earlier, that knowledge that staff have and be able to apply it even if they can no longer do the full scope of functions. So we will be opening up that position. Once we get budgetary approval for items, we'll be opening up that position to recruit from the outside, as well as utilizing it as an option for our staff who are unable to perform the full functions. So hopefully I answered all of the questions. Okay.
Comments? Yes, Commissioner Terry.
So the probation assistant role, is it, what am I trying to say? What metrics are you all using to kind of determine, has this been a successful or effective strategy for the department?
Well, we're still early in the process, but we're assessing the ability for a DPO for the most part. And again, SDPOs are also sworn staff, so I don't want to diminish their role as well. They're supervisory staff in the field, but we're really assessing their ability to assist in the preparation of material that an officer is going to then take and file as a court report. We're assessing their ability to meet with clients, because they can meet with clients. We're assessing their ability to connect individuals to services, whether it be Health Right 360, which is our AB 109 contracted provider, or one of our several navigators within our core traditional probation. So we're really looking at all of those areas, again, being early in the process, but assessing how beneficial they are in alleviating the workload of our limited DPO2s that are in the field.
And I'm sorry, they're playing an important role because they're doing assessments, they would be helping with kind of the case planning, they're doing data analysis, but they don't get paid the same. Am I understanding that correct? The pay is different?
Yes, because they don't take on the more rigorous and higher level authority that the peace officers take on, then the pay is different. To develop this program, to develop this position, we did a comprehensive study working with CEO to get it approved, but there are many other counties and jurisdictions that are utilizing similar things. So this is also part of the development. We at the front end, we look at how other people are utilizing this, and many other counties are doing something similar. But because they don't have the color of authority, they don't have the sworn obligations, they're doing a lot of similar work, but they're not doing the full scope, and that's why the pay is impacted.
And just one other area, they're not doing field visits. All of their work is confined to an office setting. So our full duty DPOs are the only staff, and SDPOs, of course, or sworn staff are the only ones that are doing field visits. So they are not performing those tasks.
So would I be correct in assuming that they do not fall under the mandatory overtime requirement?
Yeah, that's correct. They're not peace officers.
Commissioners, any more questions or comments before we move on to? Okay, with that, Director Julian, if you would like to.
Thank you. So we will now take public comment on this whole agenda item regarding adult and juvenile field services, as well as specifically the motion made by Commissioner Kakani, seconded by, I believe, Commissioner Terry. Am I right about that? In which she requested for a breakdown of the juvenile supervision data, updated that mirrors. It was Commissioner Jackson who seconded, thank you, that mirrors the 24 and 25 data that the POC has previously received. So you're welcome to give public comment on either of those items. Those of you who are here in the room, please join us at the podium, and we have a couple online, so we'll do that as well. Go ahead, Ms. Coffey.
Hi, again, this is Taliba. I'm an executive board member with Local 685. I've been in this department 28 years, and our field was our bread and butter. That's where the Care First, Jail Last came from. And I don't know if a lot of you know the history of probation. Probation was to keep people out of jail. I think the gentleman's name was Augustine. We weren't in the business of doing detention. We were there to help and keep people out of jail. But now what I'm seeing, and especially in my position, because I do investigations, a lot of these individuals, because they're not getting the type of supervision that they need, they're reoffending. They're not reporting to probation. There's not enough probation officers out there to do that. Another thing that I want to bring up, because I know time is running out, as far as going in the community, that's all nice. But you need to provide the probation members or our members with the tools to do that. We have no vest, we have no guns, we're not parole agents. So that's something that needs to be addressed as well if that's the route that you all want to go. But like I said, we are diminished, and the field is not what it was when I first came in this department and what it was 6 years ago.
Thank you. Hi, John.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is John Matthews, Chief of Staff for the Public Defender's Office in LA County. I'm also a proud dad of a 4-year-old, and I want every youth in the county's care to have the love that she has. Many thanks to Chair Canales and the Probation Oversight Commission for looking into the supervision issue to figure out how to best serve our youth. I want you to know that I often hear from Public Defender Youth Services Division attorneys who are working hard every day, showing up to work to represent our youth and advocate for them to be into the community and out of cages. What they say is that they, the public defenders, are the ones who are going out of their way to find youth the resources they need to keep them in the community, and that probation support is often non-existent. They're doing this work on top of litigating cases without any additional resources. Because of that reality, we're looking into expanding access to partners for justice advocates who are part of the defense team and develop trust with our clients. I urge the commission to continue to monitor this issue, make sure probation practices are aligned with Youth Justice Reimagined, and make sure that our youth are connected to people they trust that will make sure they are thriving. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 2 online commenters. We'll start with call-in user number 3. Your number starts with 323. We'll unmute you. You can go ahead.
Good morning, yeah.
Hi, Mel.
This is Mel again. Hey, just have 2 quick things, or two questions. One, the probation, and I apologize in advance for the redundancy, but I feel like if you really want to get something answered, you have to ask it repeatedly. Probation assistants are slated for, or as an item where DPO2s can be slated into those positions. My question remains, what about the SDPOs and what about the directors who may have a physical inability to do A, B, and C that are newly being asked and required? What is being done for supervisors and directors to be repositioned? Secondly, the probation assistants that are seeing clients, and even clerical in some offices that are meeting with clients right now, the conditions of probation that are ordered by the court are only enforceable. I mean, with the enforceability, where do we stand with the enforceability of conditions and instructions being given to clients by clerical staff, meaning intermediate typist clerks and STCs, and then also probation assistants? Are those enforceable? And I go back to what I think Chair Canales or Ms. Kakani mentioned someone earlier that had an issue and their family needed help. How will we be able to help that person if we can't enforce the conditions? That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mel. We'll go to the next caller. You're number 5, and your number starts with 310.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, you can begin.
Yes. Hi, I'm going to be the devil's advocate. I'm Annette Smith. I am a recent retiree from the field. I was a supervisor over the game unit. I have walked through and watched the demolition of the field. The field has been the bread and butter of keeping those young people out of jail. I work with the hardest of the hardest, and we have the lowest recidivism rate because of our program, our way of going and managing and seeing these young men and young women 2 and 3 times a week. Now, all that has been dismantled. Now, one thing I am hearing now is that the few supervisors that are out there in the field, they're struggling. You have some more supervisors that are getting ready to retire, not because they're being forced to, because of age. Now, one thing that I have not heard is where the CBOs that are working with us in the field. I have heard, Keith, you haven't mentioned that. Mr. Wolfberger, you haven't mentioned that. CBOs are a key factor in the field. While I was there, they assisted us, they helped us, they kept us informed. Because we were so lower staffed, we couldn't get to the homes like we normally do, but they did. And they really helped us out. Shields for Family, Family Preservation, all these people. So I don't know what's going on. I'm trying to stay out of it, but I'm listening and I'm hearing, and I want the truth to be told. Stop playing politics with our children. I want the truth to be told.
Thank you. That's the end of our public comments on this agenda item.
Commissioners, any more comments or questions before we adjourn the panelists?
Well, we'll vote on that motion.
Oh, yes, we're going to vote on the motion too. Any more questions or comments? Okay, and with that, we will vote on Commissioner Kakani's motion.
Okay, and I'll just note that Commissioner Shipp left at the break and Commissioner Prater left just recently, so that's why you're not going to hear me call their names. Please vote yes, no, or abstain. Commissioner Meredith? Commissioner Kakani? Commissioner Harris? Commissioner Jackson?
Yeah.
Commissioner Terry? And Chair Canales?
Yes.
Okay, so that is unanimous, and I will request that data.
And with that, I would like to thank our panelists. Thank you very much for your presentation and answering our questions, and you're free to go. Thank you. So now, moving on to agenda item number 6. For agenda item number 6, we will discuss and take possible action on reports from the POC Executive Director, Wendy Julian, on outstanding and current requests for information, an update on POC's annual inspection cycle, an update on concerns about OC spray, and vote on the creation of an ad hoc committee to help select the next at-large POC commissioner.
Thank you, Chair Canales. I'm going to be very brief since we're running out of time, and just start with a thank you to the POC staff and commissioners for concluding our first 2 inspections at Campus Kilpatrick, which the report is with probation now for their review. So we'll be sharing that one publicly very soon. I would love to suggest that we consider having, you all can decide, but either a special meeting or a town hall to talk about those issues. And also you have your ad hoc subcommittee that's been discussing the issues at Campus Kilpatrick as well. And then we also finished the Los Padrinos inspection on Monday. We're just in the process of collecting those notes. And it was a long day and a productive day, and many thanks to probation and all the partner agencies, and especially the young people who were very helpful to us during that during the day. We have a report that the data and research team are working on regarding OC spray. I had the opportunity to attend the receivership hearing on Friday, which is an open court hearing. And I think that there were some things discussed about use of force that reflect very much my personal concerns and the concerns that you all have brought up over the years about the continued use of this very painful method of use of force, the most severe use of force that is used within our facilities. And we've just seen the continued use of it. I mean, that's basically the bottom line. And so we'll be providing a report around some questions about the descriptions of some of the rationales for the use that go beyond the things you might expect, like youth on youth violence or assault on staff. There are a number of uses of OC spray that are listed over recent months that are things like out of control behavior or out of bounds. So you'll see that in a report that's coming out soon. And then, as Dolores mentioned at the beginning, Chair Canales, we're so sad to have Commissioner Mundo have retired again officially, and at the same time excited to start a recruitment process. Commissioner Mundo does not represent any of the required categories on the commission, so this is an at-large commission appointment. There are a few rules, like you have to live in LA County, you have to have been retired from probation for at least a year. There's some other rules that will be very clear from the bulletin, but I would like to really welcome people to reach out to me directly, and I will volunteer the commissioners to also reach out to them if you have questions about what being a commissioner feels like. And we really encourage folks from all different experiences to apply for the commission. The way we usually do this is the commission creates an ad hoc subcommittee that will review the applications. Actually, first, Janae and I will review the applications for objective qualification. So like, is your address in Los Angeles County, things like that. And then the committee will review those applications and decide who they want to interview. They will go through the interview process, which will also be informed by the board offices via their justice deputies, and then bring a recommendation to the full commission to allow the commission to select a recommended appointee. And then that person will go to the Board of Supervisors, and the Board of Supervisors hopefully will appoint them to an at-large term. This person will be filling Commissioner Mundo's unfinished term, which off the top of my head, I think has 3 years left in it. I'm looking at Janae because she probably knows it for sure, and then would qualify for 2 additional 4-year terms. So I would like to ask that one of you might make a motion to form a committee, and then the way the bylaws work is that Chair Canales will appoint the members of the committee. Okay, so that was Kakani Harris. Okay, great. If anybody has any questions, or we can take public comment.
All right, any questions or comments? And we could move on to public comment if not.
Okay, so the motion made by Commissioner Kakani and seconded by Commissioner Harris is to create an ad hoc committee. It is actually, the motion is actually attached to the agenda. It's very specific. There's nobody left in the room, so I don't think we have any live public comment. Anybody have public comment online about that? Okay.
Okay, thank you so much.
Can I call the vote? Okay, all right, so we're voting on creation of the ad hoc nomination committee for the at-large commissioner. Commissioner Meredith? Commissioner Kakani? Commissioner Harris? Commissioner Jackson? Commissioner Terry? And Chair Canales. So that's 6-0 with 2 members absent and 1 seat vacant.
Okay, thank you so much. So now that is item number 7 is matters not posted on the agenda to discuss or to place on a future meeting agenda for action. Commissioners, do you have any announcements or items you would like to place on a future agenda? Commissioner Meredith.
I want to note that this is National Law Enforcement Week. And towards that goal, I want to thank the hardworking and caring staff of probation and our probational staff for what they do. But more importantly, I also want to note that later in this week at the Washington, D.C. National Memorial for Law Enforcement Officers, Arnold C. Garcia, killed 1994 at Dorothy Kirby, Michael Wall, death in 2021 at Central, and Stanley Guinness, 2023 at Los Padrinos, who I did not know about last month, will all be on that wall. So just appreciate what probation does do under some adverse circumstance.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Meredith, for raising that. Anybody else?
Say something in that vein. I didn't realize it was an appreciation week, but I'll say two things. One, during our Los Padrinos inspection, I actually wrote a commendation about this, was able to witness some exceptionally caring behavior by staff with working with young men and boys in the enhanced supervision unit in boys care. It was exceptional. And then I also just want to say that I had an opportunity to go to the football game at Camp Page and watch the Athlerball Rocky match. And the boys were superstars. It was really incredible. But what was most impressive to me was watching the staff. They were yelling at the refs. It was pretty funny. Very, very invested in the football game in the same way that I would be with my own kids. Also, the boys, many of the boys' family members were there as well. But they let the boys play. And flag football, as many of you may know, is a very emotional sport where the calls are questionable. You know, like, did you pull the flag? Did you not pull the flag? And the staff allowed the boys to be boys and to play the game and to have fun. And then they slapped hands at the end of the game. It was a very beautiful experience where the kids got to have, I think, a very normal teenage experience that was a lot of work by the CBO who ran the program for a few months and the staff who allowed that to happen. So thank you, Dawn, for reminding me to state those wonderful things that staff are doing. I know. I can't remember. I think it must have been Athlerbaugh that won. Does anybody remember what it was on the? I think it must have been Athlerbaugh. They had names. The teams had names. I think it was the Athler boys that won. It was the last season was basketball, and the team won this season that didn't win the last season, so it was good.
Yes, thank you for that, and thank you for leaving us on a positive note. And also, now for agenda item number 8.
Public comment.
Agenda item number 8, opportunity for the public to address the Probation Oversight Commission.
No public here? Any public online wishing to address us? Okay. Good.
Okay, and with that, I would say that thank you all for joining us. We will adjourn the meeting May 11, 2026 at 1 p.m. and 12 seconds. Thank you all for joining us and sharing your comments. As a quick reminder, be sure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel at LA County POC. To receive reminders about our upcoming meetings, visit our website at www.poc.lacounty.gov to subscribe to our email list. It is now 1 p.m. and 37 seconds. Can I have a motion to adjourn today's meeting?
Double motion.
Okay. Motion to adjourn by Commissioner Kakani and seconded by all the commissioners. So we now have a motion, and any abstentions? The motion carries unanimously. Today's meeting is now adjourned. Thank you all so much for your participation.